Chapter 474. The Nangong family's courtyard. The courtyard occupied a vast area, and it was filled with pavilions, terraces, and winding rivers. It was overflowing with an ancient aura. When Nangong Wuk stepped into the courtyard, he sensed an austere aura, and he couldn't help but squint his eyes. When he stepped into the courtyard, several guards saw Nangong Wuk from afar, and they were so frightened that they turned around and ran away. They didn't stop Nangong Wuk, and they acted as if they had seen a dreadful beast. Nangong Xuanhu was currently immersed in his grief over the loss of Nangong Xuanhe, and when his subordinates informed him that Nangong Wuk had returned and was walking towards them, Nangong Xuanhu, who was immersed in his grief, widened his eyes and his anger soared. He slammed his palm on a chair, and his powerful true energy shattered the chair. That little bastard actually dared to come back? My big brother died in the secret realm, so how could that little bastard still be alive? Nangong Xuanhu's killing intent soared as he walked out of the hall with his subordinates. Nangong Wuk leisurely walked over from afar. His red hair fluttered in the wind, and it seemed like a burning flame. Nangong Xuanhu's aura surged violently, and every step he took caused the ground to shake. Smoke and dust rose and his aura soared. Two swaying chains appeared behind him. Nangong Wuk, you still dared to come back to court death? Nangong Xuanhu shouted, and his voice reverberated throughout the Nangong family like a morning bell. Nangong Wan was imprisoned in a small room. The room was very simple, and this roar just happened to reach Nangong Wan's ears. She couldn't help but open her beautiful eyes, and her long eyelashes trembled. Nangong Wuk came back? Could he defeat Nangong Xuanhe and his two brothers? Nangong Wan was somewhat worried, as she didn't know that Nangong Xuanhe and Nangong Xianying were already dead. The corners of Nangong Wuk's mouth curled up, and he calmly looked at Nangong Xuanhu, who had broken through two of the Supreme Being's shackles. However, Nangong Wuk wasn't afraid, as he had also broken through two of the Supreme Being's shackles. Even though he had just broken them, he was still a genius. If he couldn't be arrogant in the same realm as him, then how could he be considered a genius? Even without the heaven and earth obsidian flame, Nangong Wuk still had the confidence to be arrogant. When Nangong Wuk revealed his cultivation, Nangong Xuanhu was startled. This little bastard actually broke through another Supreme Being's shackle. Seemed like this lad had obtained quite a bit of benefits in the secret grounds. When Nangong Xuanhu thought of this, sorrow welled up in his heart. His elder brother, Nangong Xuanhe, had died miserably in the secret realm, while Nangong Wuk had obtained a fortuitous encounter, allowing his cultivation to advance. Comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. The more it was like this, the more Nangong Xuanhu wanted to kill Nangong Wuk. Die. With a loud shout, Nangong Xuanhu rushed out. Nangong Wuk's gaze turned cold. It was time to settle some scores. Kill. Just like that, the two of them fought without any fancy move. True chi gushed out and chi rumbled. Chains of true energy swayed in the air as the two of them fought. Every punch they threw caused the ground to tremble. The Nangong family's guards, who were watching the fight, were all frightened out of their wit. They didn't dare to join the fight. A fight of this level wasn't something they could participate in. The only thing they could do was to watch from afar and wait for the final outcome. Cloud Mist Restaurant. There was a long queue, and many customers entered the restaurant in high spirits. They discovered that the beautiful woman with long black hair had unexpectedly become a waitress of the restaurant, and this made many customers excited. However, Yu's indifference, which prevented strangers from entering, made many people apprehensive. However, the thrill she gave them made them even more excited. They surrounded Yu and chatted non-stop. Their gazes were unceasingly sweeping across Yu's exquisite body, especially her fair and straight beautiful legs, which attracted many people's gazes. Yu coldly stood in her original position, and as her gaze swept across this group of people, her pitch-black eyes became even more profound. She wasn't used to such greedy gazes, and she didn't like them either. Black true energy slowly surged out of her body, and as she opened her red lips, ice-cold words drifted out. "Order the dishes or get lost." Her words were always concise and to the point. Her ice-cold attitude made the customers even more excited. The aloof goddess was simply intoxicating. Compared to Nangong Wan's gentleness and charm, Yu's aloofness and elegance made the customers feel even more curious and excited. This kind of aloofness was always able to stimulate their desire to conquer her. A customer laughed and stood up. He moved closer to Yu, squinted his eyes and said with a smile, "Order the dishes. Of course I want to order the dishes. I wonder if the beautiful lady can accompany me for a few cups? Drink a few cups?" Yu's long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her ice-cold eyes turned to meet the gaze of that customer. In the distance, Lord Go, who was snoring under the path understanding tree, suddenly twitched his nose and opened his drowsy eyes. This was the scene of the customer courting death. He yawned, shook his head, and went back to sleep. Taking liberties with the netherworld woman. Who gave you the courage to do so? Pressure. It was as if a towering mountain had suddenly pressed down on him, and the greedy smile on that customer's face froze. In his eyes, the aloofness of the goddess had suddenly turned into that of a demon. The heavy pressure caused his chest to heave up and down, and he found it difficult to breathe. This woman was really terrifying. Nethery raised her slender and fair palm, slowly clutching that diner's neck. Goosebumps appeared all over the customer's body. That goddess's hand was ice-cold, and it was like a block of ice that would never melt. When it came into contact with his skin, he felt as if his skin had lost all feeling. What kind of monster was this? The customer felt as if the shadow of death had shrouded his heart, and the feeling of death caused his whole body to tremble. The surrounding customers were also dumbfounded. They didn't know why a goddess like her had suddenly become so terrifying. "You, let go of me," the customer said in fear. However, Yu's pitch-black eyes became even darker, and her hand gradually exerted more force, causing that customer's face to turn red. He felt extremely sullen. No matter what, he was still a supreme being expert. Why was he like a helpless child in front of this woman? Where did this woman come from? She was so strong. Why did she become a waiter? Bufang didn't know how strong the netherworld woman's cultivation was, and he wasn't clear about it either. Perhaps only the Lord Go would be able to clearly understand Yu's true strength. Bufang had never seen how many shackles she had severed, and he had never seen Yu display her true strength. However, Bufang didn't care about such things. In any case, this woman was now his waiter. The customer who was being grabbed by the neck by Yu felt as if he was about to die. His life force seemed to be dissipating along with his breathing. Was he really going to die? He had only taken liberties with a woman. Why was he going to die? Why was his life so tragic? In the end, you didn't kill him. Just when that customer was about to faint, she released her hand. The diner landed on the ground, gasping for air. His eyes were bloodshot. Without any hesitation, that customer turned around and crawled out of the store. His appearance caused many people to suck in a breath of cold air. Yu's ice-cold gaze swept past everyone. It was as if a cold winter wind had blown past them, and everyone felt a chill in their hearts. "Boss, give me a plate of egg-fried rice. Sweet and sour ribs. Give me a plate of delicious sweet and sour ribs. We came to this restaurant to eat. What are you doing? Give me a plate of Buddha jumps over the wall soup." When the customers met Yu's gaze, their hearts trembled, and they shouted in a righteous manner. This woman was too terrifying. If they wanted to take liberties with her, they would have to consider whether they were still alive or not. With an expressionless face, she memorized the names of the dishes ordered by these people. Then, she turned around and strode toward the kitchen with her fair and long legs. Her sparkling feet stepped on the ground. When she reached the window, Bufang looked at Yu's cold and beautiful face. However, Yu didn't move an inch and didn't tell Bufang what the customers had ordered. Her pitch-black eyes turned, and Yu looked at Bufang. Then, she suddenly turned around and left. Bufang was dumbfounded. What was going on? However, compared to Bufang, the customers were really dumbfounded. Yu's departure made them heave a sigh of relief. However, before they could relax, that woman came back again. This time, the storm was even more violent. Yu's long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her ice-cold words drifted out of her mouth. "Repeat the names of the dishes you ordered." The customers were stunned. In the next moment, they felt an ice-cold, killing intent lock onto their bodies. Damn it! How could ordering a dish put their lives in danger? You can't remember the names of the dishes, so you can't blame us. The customers wanted to cry, but when they saw Yu's ice-cold gaze, they held back their tears. The customers repeated the names of the dishes one more time. Yu's eyes flickered. She raised her slender hand and counted with her fingers as she memorized the names of the dishes. After she remembered everything, she turned around and returned to the window. Egg fried rice. 2 servings. Sweet and sour ribs. 3 servings. Buddha jumps over the wall soup. 1 servings. Red braised meat. 3 servings. The corners of Bufang's mouth couldn't help but twitch as he looked at Nethery, who was counting the names of the dishes with her fingers. Even someone as powerful as the Netherworld woman couldn't remember the names of the dishes. He recalled Ouyang Xiaoi, who was reciting the names of the dishes as if she was singing. There was no harm in comparison. After she finished reciting the names of the dishes, Yu stared at Bufang. "Okay, I'm done cooking and I'll place the dishes here. You just need to take them away," Bufang said. Yu nodded her head, but she didn't seem to understand. She turned her head and looked at the customers in the distance. The customers were startled. "Don't make a fuss, we won't tease you." The customers were frightened out of their wit. Yu retracted her gaze and calmly stood by the window. When Bufang finished cooking the first dish of egg-fried rice, he placed it by the window. Yu looked at the piping hot egg-fried rice, and her pitch-black eyes lit up. Bufang was taken aback. When he saw Yu's bright eyes, the corners of his mouth twitched. He suddenly had a bad premonition. Chapter 475. Smoke and dust rose into the air, and when the wind blew, the mottled rocks on the ground were blown away. In the Nangong family's courtyard, intense true energy fluctuations were fluctuating, causing the wind to become extremely sharp. When the wind brushed past people's faces, they would feel a stab of pain. The ground was full of potholes, and the broken bricks were scattered everywhere. Nangong Wook was gasping for breath. The 2 shackles on his back were swaying back and forth, emitting a powerful aura. His fiery red hair fluttered in the wind like a real flame. He slowly took a step forward, causing the rocks on the ground to creak. The ground in the distance caved in, and Nangong Xuanhu's body was lying on the ground. His gaze was sluggish, and his aura was dispirited as he looked at the sky. "I already said that I came here to settle the debt. You 3 brothers caused chaos in my Nangong family, and your crimes are unforgivable. You should have guessed your fate." Nangong Wook was gasping for breath as he spoke coldly. Although he was funny at times, he was still quite dignified when he was serious. Nangong Wook coldly looked at Nangong Xuanhu as he dragged him out of the rubble. Nangong Xuanhu, who was bleeding from the corners of his mouth, cut a sorry figure, suddenly started laughing. He coughed blood while laughing. "Nangong Wook, did you think that everything would end after you took back the Nangong family?" A crazed expression appeared in Nangong Xuanhu's eyes. "It's useless. Without Nangong Wantian and us 3 brothers, the Nangong family in Heavenly Mist City will soon be devoured by the Zhang family and the Lin family, and not even their bones will be left. Your fate will not be any better than mine." Nangong Xuanhu laughed crazily. Nangong Wook's complexion became gloomy as he took a deep breath. He punched Nangong Xuanhu's face and sent him flying, crashing into the ground. Blood splattered everywhere. "Don't worry, the Nangong family won't decline in my hands," Nangong Wook said resolutely. Then, he turned to look at the terrified guards beside him. From now on, I am the Nangong family's patriarch. Everyone has to listen to me, Nangong Wuk said. How could those guards dare to refute him? Nangong Xuanhe and his two brothers were either dead or heavily injured. Only the crippled Nangong Xuanhu remained. As guards, they naturally chose to support Nangong Wuk. Very good. Throw this old dog into prison. When our Nangong family is at its peak, we'll let this old dog have a good look. The guards' hearts shuddered, but they still complied. They swarmed over Nangong Xuanhu, whose cultivation had been crippled by Nangong Wuk, and threw him into prison. Nangong Wuk rubbed his chest, and his face slightly distorted. He squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. It was just as Nangong Xuanhu had said. It would be extremely difficult for the Nangong family to gain a foothold in the Heavenly Mist City after losing so many experts. The Lin family and the Zhang family would never let go of this fat piece of meat. That was the Nangong family. Moreover, that wasn't all. Many disciples of first-rate forces had died in the secret realm. The Grand Baron sect, Wind and Thunder Pavilion, Puppet sect, and other powerful forces would send their experts to Heavenly Mist City. As for the Nangong family, who possessed the secret realm's teleportation array, they would definitely bear the brunt of the wrath of these forces. This was truly a headache. You stretched out her slender hand and picked up the bowl of steaming egg-fried rice, which was emitting a fragrant aroma. Just serve it to the customer who ordered the dish, Bu Fong said as he looked at you. You nodded, but her gaze didn't leave the egg-fried rice. She moved her delicate face closer to the egg-fried rice, and the steaming hot air blew on her face, causing her pale complexion to become slightly flushed. Then, she stuck out her tongue and licked the egg-fried rice. Immediately, the scalding rice entered her mouth. The rich fragrance of the egg-fried rice suddenly burst forth in Yu's mouth, and the fragrance caused her eyes to light up. It was simply too delicious. You licked her lips, and her eyes lit up. Bu Fong looked through the window at Yu, who was licking the egg-fried rice, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. As expected, this woman was still a little unreliable as a waitress. When you placed the blue and white porcelain plate in front of the customer was dumbfounded. That customer looked at the egg-fried rice he ordered. When there was less than a third of it left, he turned his head to look at Nethery. That outrageously beautiful woman was staring at the blue and white porcelain plate in front of him with her eyes shining. There were even grains of rice at the corner of her mouth. Did she have to be like this? The customer wanted to cry, but no tears came out. However, when he thought of the woman's terrifying might, he didn't dare to say anything. Beauty, I'll give you the rest of the egg-fried rice. Give me a new one, the customer said as he endured the pain in his heart. A bowl of egg-fried rice cost 10 crystals. It was even more expensive than ordinary elixirs. When you heard the customer's words, she looked at him in astonishment and discovered that his eyes were filled with sincerity. Without saying anything, she grabbed the blue and white porcelain plate and stuffed the rest of the egg-fried rice into her mouth. Although the essence contained in the egg-fried rice was very little, it tasted good. The dragon blood rice also tasted good, so you chose the latter between the heavenly treasures and the dragon blood rice. Now that there was another delicious dish in front of her, she definitely wouldn't give it up. After finishing the egg-fried rice, you wiped her red lips in satisfaction. That tender and beautiful red lips, because they were stained with oil, seemed to flicker under the illumination of the light. It was rather charming. Many of the customers were stunned when they saw this. You, come here. Bu Fong's indifferent voice rang out. He leaned on the kitchen door frame and looked at you helplessly. Like a child who was caught stealing candy, you suddenly felt a little flustered and uneasy. However, Bu Fong didn't say too much. He only explained to you the things to take note of when serving the dishes, and emphasized on not stealing. You should have eaten her fill, so she coldly nodded her head. Next, the rest of the dishes were accurately served to each customer's table, which made Bu Fong quite satisfied. You, who had gotten used to her role, seemed to like this job, and she quickly got into the zone. Every time a dish was served, she couldn't help but lick her lips, subconsciously wanting to steal a bite. For you, this was really a kind of torture. If Ouyang Xiaoyi saw Yu's state, she would definitely be very pleased and nod her head. Who didn't go through this in the past? The day's business quickly came to an end. When the last customer left the store, Bufang closed the bronze door. He pulled out a chair and sat down, resting for a while. Yu walked around the store barefooted, as if she was a little curious about the things in the store. After walking around for a long time, she obediently looked for a seat and sat down. She blinked her pitch-black eyes and stared at Bufang. "Bufang, I'm hungry," Yu said. Bufang was taken aback. Lord Go had already arrived beside Bufang. He raised his eyes and said, "Lord Go is also hungry. Didn't this plump dog sleep as soon as it came back? It didn't even move, yet it was already hungry. Was it a dog or a pig?" Bufang was somewhat speechless. He stood up and walked toward the kitchen. The Netherworld woman also stood up and followed behind Bufang. However, just as she was about to enter the kitchen, Bufang stopped her. "The kitchen is an important place, and it's forbidden to enter. You can go anywhere except the kitchen," Bufang said solemnly. The Netherworld woman didn't really understand him, so she nodded her head to show that it didn't matter. As long as there was food, everything would be fine. As such, the Netherworld woman sat back in her seat. Bufang went to the kitchen and took out the dragon blood rice. He skillfully cooked a portion of dragon blood rice soaked in crystal source purple essence and a portion of sweet and sour dragon ribs soaked in crystal source purple essence. After he finished cooking, Bufang walked out of the kitchen with a porcelain plate in his hand. Lord Go and the Netherworld woman were already impatient, and they looked at Bufang with the same expression on their faces. "This is Yu's." Bufang placed the dragon blood rice in front of the Netherworld woman. "This is Black's." The sweet and sour dragon ribs was placed in front of Lord Go. The aroma and steam spread out in spirals, and it looked somewhat enshrouded under the light. Lord Go couldn't bear it any longer, and he gobbled down the porcelain plate and started eating. After eating just a piece of meat, Lord Go couldn't help but squint his eyes, and he wagged his tail as he savored the rich flavor of the sweet and sour ribs. It was too blissful. As expected, only Bufang's sweet and sour ribs were authentic. After such a long time, he was finally able to eat delicious sweet and sour ribs. The Netherworld woman grabbed a handful of dragon blood rice and stuffed it into her mouth. Bufang furrowed his brows when he saw this. He went to the kitchen and took out a porcelain spoon. He passed it to Yu and told her to scoop up some rice and eat it. Yu stared at the porcelain spoon for a long time before tossing it to the side. She continued stuffing the rice into her mouth with her hand. She ate happily, and her mouth was covered with grease. She didn't look like a beautiful woman at all. Of course, she looked much better than Lord Go, who ate the porcelain plate. Bufang felt somewhat helpless. It seemed like teaching the Netherworld woman how to use a spoon would be an arduous task. Munch munch. The interior of the store was brightly lit, and Lord Dog and the Netherworld woman were happily eating their delicacies. The sound of their mouths slapping could be heard coming from within the store, and it reverberated in the surroundings. As night fell, 2 crescent moons hung in the sky, and they emitted a gentle radiance that resembled a fine veil. It was as gentle as water, and it made one's heart feel at peace. Bufang boy, your culinary skills have improved. This sweet and sour ribs. Woof. Little girl, don't snatch Lord Go's sweet and sour ribs. I'll just eat one piece and have a taste. The Netherworld woman's cold voice resounded. Woof. Do you want to fight? Didn't we agree to eat one piece? Little girl, are you trying to cause trouble? Bufang looked at Blackie, who was protecting his porcelain bowl, and the Netherworld woman, who was staring at the porcelain bowl under Lord Go's paw. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. As long as you two are happy, it's fine. Now, he would have to worry about the Netherworld woman's sleep. Chapter 476. Where should he arrange for the Netherworld woman to stay? Bufang sat on a chair and looked at the Netherworld woman, who was happily fighting over sweet and sour ribs with the Lord Go. He felt a headache coming on. There were only 2 rooms in the store. One belonged to Bufang, while the other belonged to Yang Meiji. If he arranged for the Netherworld woman to stay in Yang Meiji's room, what if that tall woman suddenly came back? Although that woman rarely came back, it was better to be safe than sorry. If he were to occupy her room and was discovered, it would be very embarrassing. Should he arrange for you to stay in my room? Bufang pondered for a moment, then decided to forget about it. You smelly girl, if you try to snatch the Lord Go's sweet and sour ribs again, the Lord Go will be angry. Blackie wagged his tail and angrily glared at the Netherworld woman, who was holding a piece of sweet and sour ribs with her fair and slender hands. The Netherworld woman licked her red lips and emitted a seductive aura. Then, she stuffed the sweet and sour ribs into her mouth. She slurped her food noisily. The delicious sweet and sour ribs made the Netherworld woman happy both physically and mentally. Little Black felt that its whole body was not good, as if something had broken with a cracking sound. How infuriating! He suddenly realized that he had dug a pit for himself by tricking this girl into coming back. This lass was also a big foodie. Did you see how much food she ate today? Not only did she not eat her fill, but she also wanted to snatch his sweet and sour ribs. Was there any reason left? Did the Lord Go think it was easy for him to eat a piece of sweet and sour ribs? However, Blackie was also helpless. He couldn't just slap this girl away with his paw. After all, he was the one who tricked her into coming back. Even if he had to hold back his tears, he would have to swallow it. The Lord Go looked at the Netherworld woman, who was happily munching on the sweet and sour ribs with narrowed eyes. He let out a bark and angrily gobbled down the sweet and sour ribs on the porcelain plate. Soon, the sweet and sour ribs on the porcelain plate entered the Lord Go's mouth. The Lord Go's mouth bulged and his eyes widened. He stared at the Netherworld woman and chewed on the sweet and sour ribs. Bufang was speechless. This stingy dog, where's his integrity, snatching food from a woman? When the Netherworld woman saw that Lord Go had finished eating all the sweet and sour ribs, she expressionlessly picked up the porcelain plate on the table and stuck out her tongue to lick it. The porcelain plate was stained with the juice of the sweet and sour ribs. The taste was delicious. Lord Go almost choked to death. Was there a need to be so deranged? Even the liquor was not spared. Bufang was also stunned. All right. Just pretend that he didn't say anything earlier. This woman is too crazy. The Netherworld woman placed the porcelain plate down and leaned back comfortably on the chair. She was so lazy that she looked like a docile black cat. Her voluptuous body moved up and down, and her breathing was accompanied by a different kind of allure. Her long black hair spread out and covered half of the Netherworld woman's face. Her faintly discernible face was breathtakingly beautiful. After the Lord Go swallowed the sweet and sour ribs in his mouth, he stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He glanced at you, who was lazily leaning back on the chair, and snorted. Then, he took graceful cat-like steps and returned to the path understanding tree, where he fell asleep. Sleeping after eating was the life that the Lord Go loved the most. This was also the reason why the Lord Go was so fat. The Netherworld woman opened her squinted eyes and looked at Bufang. She pouted her lips and expressed the happiness in her heart. Then, under Bufang's dumbfounded gaze, she stood up. Pitch-black true energy spread out from the Netherworld woman's fair palm. Then, she waved her hand and the pitch-black Netherworld ship, which emanated an ancient aura, appeared in midair. With a loud bang, the Netherworld ship landed beside the Lord Go. It gave rise to a strong gale, which caused the Lord Go's fur to flutter. Under Yu's control, the Netherworld ship shrunk a lot and landed right in front of the path understanding tree. What did this woman want to do? Bufang was taken aback and looked at the Netherworld woman in confusion. The Netherworld woman walked to the front of the Netherworld ship. Her long black hair reached her waist, and she turned around to face Bufang. She clasped her hands together and nodded slightly. Then, she stepped into the ship with her sparkling feet. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. As expected, he had thought too much about it. Originally, he was having a headache thinking about how to arrange things for this woman. Now, it seemed like he didn't need to think about it anymore. Even breathing sounds came from the netherworld ship. Bufang stood up and picked up the blue and white porcelain plates on the table. Then, he slowly walked toward the kitchen. As soon as he entered the kitchen, the lights in the store were extinguished, and darkness enveloped the store. After Bufang threw the porcelain plates into the dishwasher prepared by the system, he stretched his body and patted Xiao Bai's plump belly. Then, he turned around and went upstairs. After washing his body in the bathroom, he shook his wet hair and leaned against the window. He looked at the beautiful night scenery of Heavenly Mist City, which made him feel quite happy. The night passed silently. The next day, when the morning sun shone through the window and shone on Bufang's face, it brought about a warm and comfortable feeling. Bufang slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were a little hazy, and he yawned. Bufang stood up and used a velvet rope to tie up his long hair. Then, he slowly walked out of the room after washing his face and rinsing his mouth. However, just as he went downstairs, at the corner between the store and the kitchen, Bufang suddenly froze. He turned his head and saw a pitch-black figure standing there, staring at him with wide eyes. What the hell? Startled, Bufang jumped up and took a step back. It was only at this moment that he realized that the figure was Yu. Why did she scare him so early in the morning? Bufang was somewhat speechless. When the netherworld woman saw Bufang, her eyes slightly curved. Then, she shook her head, causing her long black hair to flutter in the wind. She turned around and walked into the store. Then, she sat down on her seat and straightened her back. Was she preparing to eat breakfast? The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. This woman was quite self-aware. Bufang glanced around and saw that Blackie, the lazy dog, had actually gotten up for the first time. Its paws were on the table, and it was standing on the chair with its tongue hanging out. These two gluttons, Bufang chuckled and turned around to enter the kitchen. He didn't immediately start cooking. Instead, he held the dragon bone kitchen knife and started practicing the Overlord 13 blade. After completing the temporary task, Bufang's true energy cultivation had increased by a lot. However, there were still some days before he would break through to the divine realm. It was not a bad idea to practice the Overlord 13 blades during this period of time. It was the same as when he practiced the meteor cutting technique. If a chef wanted to maintain his culinary skills, he would need to practice every day. Practice makes perfect, and this was an extremely important condition for a chef. Holding the dragon bone kitchen knife, Bufang picked up Xiaopi, who was lying on his shoulder, and placed it on the stove. Xiaopi, who was still somewhat confused, looked at Bufang with its compound eyes. Bufang brandished the dragon bone kitchen knife, and his aura changed unceasingly. Then, he pointed the knife at Shrimpy. Xiaopi was indifferent to Bufang's knife aura. Its numerous small legs crawled around on the stove, and it started running around chaotically. Well, the Overlord 13 blades wasn't something that could be rushed. Bufang put away the kitchen knife and picked up Xiaopi, who was running around chaotically, and threw it on his shoulder. Xiaopi, who was lying on Bufang's shoulder, became much more obedient. It started spitting bubbles. After practicing his cutting technique for a while, Bufang started his daily cooking practice. He took out the supreme beast meat, cut it into pieces, and prepared to cook sweet and sour ribs. He took out the black turtle constellation wok and spat out a mouthful of golden 10,000 bestial flames. The temperature in the kitchen rose. Then, he poured some oil into the wok and started stir-frying it. After a short while, a rich aroma wafted out of the kitchen. The eyes of Yu and Lord Go, who were sitting in the store, lit up, and they became excited. When the noises in the kitchen stopped, A human and a dog turned their heads toward the direction of the kitchen. A slender figure slowly walked out of the shadows of the kitchen. He was holding 2 fragrant dishes in his hand. Black as sweet and sour ribs, and used dragon blood rice. Bufang placed the 2 dishes in front of them and said calmly. After he finished, Bufang returned to the kitchen. Very quickly, he walked out of the kitchen with a steamer of golden shumai in his hands. The Netherworld woman grabbed the bowl of dragon blood rice with her slender fingers and stuffed it into her mouth. She felt that these days were too wonderful. She could eat dishes filled with spiritual essence every day. Compared to the miserable life she had in the secret realm, where she could only eat one meal after another, this kind of life was even more comfortable than the life in the Netherworld. Lord Go was eating the sweet and sour ribs happily. He was eating faster today because he was afraid that the Netherworld woman would try to snatch his food from him again. Bufang elegantly picked up a golden shumai with his chopsticks. The golden shumai was soaked in boiling gravy. Bufang used his chopsticks to make a small opening, and the rich and fragrant gravy immediately flowed out from the opening. Bufang quickly sucked the soup into his mouth. The mellow and rich fragrance that entered his mouth made Bufang's pores open. It was no wonder that Lord Go and the Netherworld woman were eating so happily. It turned out that a dish that contained the crystal source purple essence would raise its taste to a whole new level. The taste of this golden shumai was much better than what Bufang had cooked in the past. This was simply unimaginable. After he finished sucking the soup, Bufang unhurriedly stuffed the golden shumai into his mouth and started chewing it. The taste of pork mixed with the fragrance of the rice lingered in Bufang's mouth. When he swallowed it, his entire stomach felt warm. Bufang exhaled lightly and felt somewhat satisfied. All of a sudden, Bufang was taken aback. He saw that the Netherworld woman had already finished eating the dragon blood rice, and she turned her head to look at his golden shumai. Then, without waiting for Bufang to say anything, the Netherworld woman grabbed a piece of golden shumai and stuffed it into her mouth. She wasn't afraid of the heat at all. Munch, munch. The more she ate, the brighter her eyes became. She discovered a new delicacy. Was this place heaven? The Netherworld woman's rosy lips, which were stained with oil, were filled with charm, and she squinted her eyes in delight. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. This gluttonous woman, picking up another piece of golden shumai, Bufang happily ate it. Lord Go rejoiced in other people's misfortune as he looked at Bufang. It was really good that this girl didn't steal his sweet and sour ribs today. After swallowing the last piece of sweet and sour ribs, Lord Go strode elegantly like a cat back to the path understanding tree and went to sleep. When Bufang finished eating the second piece of golden shumai, he was completely dumbfounded. He looked at Yu, who was holding a piece of golden shumai in her left hand and another in her right hand, and she was still chewing on a piece of golden shumai in her mouth. Bufang finally understood the pain Lord Go felt the day before. This woman could really eat. After a long time, Bufang, who was holding a piece of golden shumai with his chopsticks, froze in the air. He expressionlessly looked at the empty steamer basket. Chapter 477. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, the store began its daily business. Bufang opened the store's bronze gate, and a heavy creaking sound echoed in the surroundings. As the gate was opened, sunlight shone into the store and warmly shone on Bufang's body. Bufang couldn't help but squint his eyes. There were already many people outside the store. The elixir stores in the area were all selling elixirs before the Cloud Mist restaurant opened for business. Because it was a small store, the prices of their elixirs were extremely low, which attracted many customers. Even though business was difficult, it wasn't a loss. Of course, some of the customers who came to this area were just here to buy elixirs. Even though the Cloud Mist restaurant was already famous in Heavenly Mist City, most people didn't know about it. After all, Heavenly Mist City wasn't small. The area where the Cloud Mist restaurant was located was under the jurisdiction of the Nangong family. In Heavenly Mist City, other than the Nangong family, there were many other big families. For example, the Lin family, the Zhang family, the City Lord's mansion, and some other small families. These families formed the Heavenly Mist City, which was a developed city. As a restaurant in a small area, the Cloud Mist restaurant's reputation wasn't that great. Compared to some high-grade elixir stores, its reputation wasn't just a little bit lower. For example, the top-grade elixir store in Heavenly Mist City, the Flowing Cloud House. If this name was mentioned in Heavenly Mist City, everyone would know about it. Not only in Heavenly Mist City, but even among the 3 great pill cities of the Pill Palace, the Flowing Cloud House was second to none. Temporary mission. Host, please spread the name of the Cloud Mist restaurant throughout Heavenly Mist City within 3 months. Make it a household name. Mission reward. Kung Pao chicken cooking method. Bufang squinted his eyes and enjoyed the lazy feeling of the warm gaze on his body. The solemn voice of the system resounded in his mind. On such a beautiful morning, the system had unexpectedly given him a temporary quest. It was simply too unkind. Bufang pursed his lips and let out a deep breath. This mission wasn't simple. Within 3 months, he had to make the Cloud Mist restaurant's name spread throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City. Moreover, he had to make it known to every single household. This difficulty wasn't something that could be achieved by simply setting up a stinky tofu stall in front of the restaurant. Bufang also felt a slight headache. The restaurant was already weak in Heavenly Mist City, and if he wanted to complete the temporary mission, it meant that Bufang had to make the Cloud Mist restaurant into a top-notch elixir store that was not inferior to the Flowing Cloud House. This was not a small amount of work, and Bufang really had no clue at all. Owner Bu, are you starting work? The owner of an elixir store that was closest to the restaurant saw Bufang open the bronze door and immediately greeted him with a smile. Bufang nodded, then turned around and walked into the store. The elixir store's owner squinted his eyes and smiled. He put away the elixir jade bottles placed on the elixir store and eagerly followed the stream of people into the store. Even though there weren't many types of dishes in the store, the taste was undeniably good. Most importantly, many people who had eaten Owner Bu's dishes realized that they were actually similar to elixirs in that they were different method. Not only was it delicious, but it could also strengthen the true energy in one's body. To these people, this was simply the most wonderful thing. The reason they bought elixirs was to strengthen their cultivation. Now that they had a chance to eat delicious food and strengthen their cultivation, why wouldn't they cherish it? With the increase in the number of customers, the store gradually became crowded. Many customers excitedly came to order dishes. After you ate and drank to your fill, she naturally had to start her work. Although this woman was good at eating, she wasn't stupid and knew what her job was. However, her cold and aloof appearance still attracted the attention of many customers. Although many customers suffered losses the day before, not all of them suffered losses. Some of them were still stunned by Yu's peerless beauty. After all, she was a beauty that wasn't inferior to the Nangong goddess. How could they not look at her? However, there seemed to be a lot of rumors about Nethery among the customers. They knew that it wasn't wise to take liberties with this beautiful waitress, so they just looked at Yu with admiration. Since no one came to provoke her, Yu wouldn't cause trouble for no reason. Her way of thinking was quite simple. She just wanted to complete the tasks that Bufang assigned to her every day and then have food to eat. Her ideals were quite simple. After the Netherworld woman spent some time getting used to her new role, she gradually got used to reporting the names of her dishes. This made Bufang quite satisfied. The business of the store gradually went on the right track. In the Nangong family's courtyard, Nangong Wan was wearing a pink dress. Her fiery red hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. Her exquisite face was filled with astonishment. Her red lips were slightly parted, revealing a look of disbelief. Did you say that old dog Nangong Xuanha died? Nangong Xuanha, The culprit who caused the internal strife in the Nangong family died just like that? How many days had it been? Nangong Xuanhe isn't the only one. Nangong Xianying is dead as well. I also crippled Nangong Xuanhu. Now I have finally taken back the Nangong family. Nangong Wuk raised his head proudly like a proud rooster. Nangong Wan looked at her brother in astonishment. She naturally knew what kind of person Nangong Wuk was. Could it be that his experience this time had enlightened him? If that was the case, it would be a good thing. Oh, right. Little Wan, didn't that old dog Nangong Xuanhe arrange an engagement for you? Don't worry. That sissy Mu Chunfeng died in the secret realm. You are no longer bound by an engagement, Nangong Wuk said with a smile. When she heard this, Nangong Wan's beautiful eyes lit up for the first time. Is that true? Is that Mu Chunfeng dead? That's right. Something happened in the secret realm and many people died. Your brother, I experienced countless hardships and dangers. I killed countless enemies and survived, Nangong Wuk said solemnly. His conscience didn't hurt at all. Of course, brother-in-law helped me a lot. Brother-in-law is really good. Don't you want to reconsider? Brother-in-law? What brother-in-law? Nangong Wan was startled. Who are you talking about? Old Boo, he's not ugly and he can cook. Isn't he a good person? Nangong Wuk encouraged. Nangong Wan's face flushed. She was still too young. How could she believe that Nangong Wuk, this clown, would become normal? If you say one more word, I will use a needle to sew your mouth shut, Nangong Wan threatened. Nangong Wuk's expression stiffened. Nangong Wan snorted and turned around to leave. After walking for a while, she seemed to have thought of something. She turned her head and asked, By the way, is my elixir store still there? I want to continue selling elixirs. Nangong Wuk looked at Nangong Wan, who was twisting her waist and disappearing. Nangong Wuk curled his lips and said, What a hypocritical lass. Selling elixirs? She must have gone to Old Boo's store to eat the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She also wanted to meet Old Boo. Pass down my orders. Tell the people in charge of the various industries to gather in the Nangong family's building. We will hold a family meeting. Nangong Wuk's temperament changed when he saw Nangong Wan disappear. The guard's face turned cold. He nodded and retreated. The Nangong family's building. There were many chairs made of sandalwood in the huge meeting room. Many old men were sitting on those chairs. They were the people in charge of the various industries of the Nangong family. Some of them were deacons, while others were elders. If Nangong Wuk wanted to stabilize the family, he would have to stabilize these people first. However, after Nangong Wuk went through this matter, he had grown up. His aura became more stable. Many of the elders looked at Nangong Wuk with trembling eyes. They felt that this meeting wasn't going to be good. Many of them knew about the grudge between Nangong Wuk and Nangong Xuanhe and his two brothers. Many of them had helped Nangong Xuanhe. Therefore, they were quite nervous. They felt that Nangong Wuk wouldn't dare to touch them. After all, they controlled the Nangong family's production chain. Nangong Wuk looked around at everyone. When everyone was present, he leaned on his chair and looked at them with an ice-cold gaze. When Nangong Xuanhe, that old dog, extracted the heaven and earth obsidian flame from my body, all of you were there. As expected, the hearts of the Nangong family members trembled. Their complexions became unsightly. All of you should know that I crippled Nangong Xuanhu and that old dog, Nangong Xuanhe, died in the secret realm. Now I am the head of the Nangong family. Is there anyone who isn't convinced? No one stood out. After all, Nangong Wuk was the rightful successor of the Nangong family. Since all of you admit that I am the head of the Nangong family, I will settle my debt with all of you today. Powerful true energy surged out of Nangong Wuk's body. Two chains swayed behind him. Heaven and earth's pressure spread out, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. The guards rushed into the hall. The ice-cold swords emitted from them caused the hearts of all the elders to shiver. Nangong Wuk had really grown up. Nangong Wan arrived in front of the Cloud Mist restaurant. Along the way, she saw that the elixir stores were still quite empty. This didn't change even after she disappeared for a long time. The elixir store's business had probably been snatched away by the restaurant. Owner Bu's culinary skills were really shocking. When Nangong Wan thought about the Buddha jumps over the wall soup cooked by Bufong, she felt a little greedy. The taste of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was really delicious. Moreover, it could help her cultivation increase. This was really a pleasant surprise. She could cultivate while enjoying delicious food. It was like getting the best of both worlds. Nangong Wan arrived at her elixir store. Since she hadn't been managing it for a long time, her store had become somewhat dilapidated. It was even covered with a thick layer of dust. She raised her hand and waved it, causing the dust to fill the air. Nangong Wan coughed several times. She felt somewhat uncomfortable. Forget it. I will find someone to clean it up at night. I will go to Owner Bu's restaurant to eat. Nangong Wan shook her red hair. Her slender and beautiful legs strode toward Owner Bu's restaurant. Since Nangong Wan had arrived quite late, there weren't many customers left. Many of them had eaten their fill and left in satisfaction. Tsk. The aloof beauty in Owner Bu's store is really beautiful. I have never seen such a beautiful woman before. What nonsense are you spouting? Our goddess Nangong isn't bad. What do you know? Goddess Nangong's temperament is inferior to that Owner Bu's beauty. Nangong Wan's body stiffened when she heard the discussions of the surrounding customers. Her red lips, which were covered by a veil, curled into a cold and arrogant arc. Owner Bu's beauty? Interesting. I really want to see her. Chapter 478. Within the Nangong family's building, the atmosphere was somewhat gloomy. The bloodbath didn't last long, and the smell of blood in the hall quickly dissipated. Nangong Wuk was still sitting in his seat, but at this moment, no one dared to look down on him. Family head, our Nangong family has just recovered from the internal strife, and the Lin and Zhang families have already started to take action. They have already started to invade our businesses. An elder said respectfully and nervously. Family head, the new Magical Hand Conference has already been confirmed to be held in our Heavenly Mist City. Now, the Pill Palace has already started to take action, and many powerful alchemists and people with special abilities are rushing towards Heavenly Mist City. We need to immediately report the names of our family's participants. An elder carefully looked at Nangong Wuk. When Nangong Wuk heard this, he was slightly taken aback. The Magical Hand Conference was about to start again? Moreover, this time's Magical Hand Conference was actually going to be held in Heavenly Mist City. This was a little interesting. Heavenly Mist City was really in a precarious situation these days, and all kinds of matters had piled up. This conference couldn't be underestimated. It was the most prestigious event held by the Pill Palace. It wasn't just to raise the status of alchemists. It was also an opportunity for people with special abilities. Although this conference didn't cover the entire Hidden Dragon continent, it covered the entire Pill Palace. The Pill Palace wasn't small, and there were tens of millions of people living in it. There were also tens of thousands of alchemists, and there were even more people with special abilities. The Magical Hand Conference was an event held by the higher-ups of the Pill Palace to increase the fame of alchemists. If an alchemist could get into the top 10 of the conference, his or her fame in the Pill Palace would skyrocket to a terrifying level. After all, this was an event promoted by the Pill Palace. At the same time, this was also an opportunity for people with special abilities. These people with special abilities might not be alchemists, they might be doctors, or even poison masters. They would also have the opportunity to display their skills in the grand ceremony, as long as they could achieve the theme of Magic Hands Bring Back the Spring. Whether it was helping someone break through, healing, or strengthening one's foundation, as long as the effects were satisfactory, they would become the focus of the conference. However, according to the previous situation, most of these people with special abilities were just there to watch the show. After all, how could doctors and poison masters compare to alchemists? One spirit pill was enough to destroy everything. Family head, who should our Nangong family send this time? The elder asked cautiously as he looked at Nangong Wuk, who was deep in thought and had a silly smile on his face. In the past, it had always been Nangong Wuk who had participated. However, now that he was the clan master, would he still participate? This was the doubt in the hearts of the elders. Of course. Why wouldn't I participate? I suddenly feel that this magical hand conference will be very interesting. Not only do I want to participate, but Xiao Wan will also register for it. She has been studying alchemy for a long time, but she has never participated in a formal competition. Today, she will go and try her hand at it, Nangong Wuk said as he clapped his hands. His face was full of excitement. That elder froze for a moment, then nodded his head. Remember this. The city lord's mansion is about to send someone to invite me over. After all, this is the magical hand conference, and the people in charge of the various clans have to discuss it together. Nangong Wuk stood up and said. He took a few steps forward, and just as he was about to reach the entrance of the building, he suddenly said, also, although our Nangong family has just experienced internal strife, we are not someone who can be bullied. If the Lin and Zhang families send people to mess with our businesses, don't be afraid. Just fight back. The people in charge were dumbfounded. I will take responsibility for anything that happens, Nangong Wuk said. We can't be cowardly. If we cower, others will take advantage of us. After he finished speaking, Nangong Wuk strode out of the building. When Nangong Wan stepped into the Cloud Mist restaurant, she couldn't help but squint her beautiful eyes when she smelled the fragrance in the air. She raised her slender and fair hand and took off the veil that was covering her face. Her beautiful face was immediately revealed to the air. Her fiery red hair complemented her fair skin. Her charming face carried a tinge of innocence. She was indeed a beauty that could not be imagined. The few remaining customers in the store were all stunned when they saw her. Although the Netherworld woman was beautiful, she was too cold and aloof. She gave people a feeling that she was 1,000 miles away from them. Nangong Wan was very beautiful. Her charming beauty was the most attractive kind of beauty, and it was easy for people to become restless. What the F***ck? It's the Nangong goddess. Why is she here? The internal strife of the Nangong family ended, and the goddess immediately came here? Could it be? Don't talk nonsense. Didn't the Nangong family betroth their goddess to a monstrous alchemist in the Heavenly Pill City? It seems like she still has feelings for the owner boo. TSK. The eyes of the customers lit up. They felt that they were really happy in the store. They had delicious food to eat, and delicious food could increase their cultivation. They also had beautiful women to look at. Most importantly, the beautiful women were full of gossip. Nangong Wan's figure swayed, and her slender and plump legs attracted the gazes of the people in the store. She found a place to sit down and raised her left leg, pressing it on top of her right leg. The slit of her long skirt slid down her fair skin, revealing her alluring and beautiful legs. The customers' eyes widened when they saw her. Tap, tap, tap. You walked over as usual. She was getting better at ordering dishes. What do you want to eat? Just order, the Netherworld woman said coldly. Nangong Wan didn't order immediately. Instead, she raised her head, and her red bangs fell on Yu's body. Nangong Wan couldn't help but sigh in admiration when she saw how beautiful the woman in front of her was. She had black hair, black skirt, black eyes, and skin that was even fairer than her own. Nangong Wan felt a sense of inferiority when she saw her. You waited for a long time, but she didn't hear the sound of someone ordering dishes. She furrowed her beautiful brows and looked at the customers. Order dishes. If you don't, then scram. The Netherworld woman didn't have a good temper. She was an arrogant person, and if it wasn't for delicious food, she wouldn't have lowered herself to be a waitress. She could kill the people in front of her with a single slap. "Are you the new waitress that owner Bu hired? You really have a bad temper," Nangong Wan said indifferently. Her red lips curled up, and a dangerous arc appeared in her eyes. Yu's expressionless face trembled, and it seemed as if she felt a trace of hostility. She looked at the woman in front of her in astonishment. She was very beautiful, but she wasn't as beautiful as her. "Ask owner Bu to come out. I want to order dishes from him alone," Nangong Wan said with a smile. She raised her finger and pointed at her red lips. What did she mean? Did she come here to cause trouble? Yu's gaze became pitch black and deep. As she looked at Nangong Wan, a formless pressure appeared around her. Nangong Wan's pitch-black eyes were reflected in her eyes, and they gradually turned into unfathomable black holes. Nangong Wan felt as if her mind was about to sink into them. Cold sweat drenched Nangong Wan's body, and her body trembled slightly. "Pa!" All of a sudden, Nangong Wan's mind trembled. When she came back to her senses, she felt as if she had just been fished out of a pool of water. You felt a hand patting her shoulder, and the deep look in her eyes disappeared. "You don't cause trouble," Bu Fong said calmly. The netherworld woman turned her head and looked at Bu Fong expressionlessly. She snorted and walked toward the path understanding tree. She pulled out a chair and sat beside the Lord Go. Nangong Wan breathed heavily, and her towering chest heaved up and down. Her eyes were filled with fright. She had thought that she was going to die a moment ago. It was Bu Fong who saved her. Nangong Wan raised her head and forced a smile onto her face. "Owner Bu, long time no see. I heard that you saved my brother. That's why I came here personally to thank you." Yu, who was in the distance, looked at them with her pitch-black eyes. Lord Go yawned, and he lost interest in her after taking a glance at her. What was the use of a beautiful woman? It wasn't as if he could eat her like sweet and sour ribs. On the other hand, the surrounding diners were so excited that their pores bloomed, and their eyes shone with curiosity. The Nangong goddess was defeated in the first confrontation between the store's goddess and the store's goddess. This was even more interesting. Chapter 479. Nangong Wuk hummed a tune as he walked through the Nangong family's courtyard. His face was filled with satisfaction. The courtyard's winding paths led to a secluded place, and the environment was excellent. There were all kinds of trees around the courtyard, and the sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves. It seemed as though it was made of gold, and it shone on the path. All of a sudden, Nangong Wuk's humming came to an abrupt stop. His whole body trembled as though he had been struck by lightning. "Wait, did I miss something? Did little Wan go to old Bu's store? Then, she should have met that terrifying woman, right?" Nangong Wuk suddenly thought to himself. Nangong Wuk was the clearest about how terrifying the netherworld woman was. That frightening pressure, which made him lie on the ground and unable to move at all, still left a lingering fear in his heart even now. If little Wan didn't know what was good for her and provoked that woman, the consequences would be unimaginable. When Nangong Wuk thought about this, he felt a headache coming on. He was so pretentious in front of Nangong Wan that he forgot to tell her about such an important matter. He hoped that nothing bad would happen to her. Nangong Wuk didn't care about anything else, so he turned around and left the courtyard. His speed unconsciously increased as he was worried about Wan Wan. "Ah, Patriarch, the City Lord asked you to go to the City Lord's mansion to discuss something." An elder, who had just entered the mansion, saw Nangong Wuk and quickly waved his hand to greet him. "I have something to do, so help me delay it." Nangong Wuk hurriedly rushed out and he didn't stop. That elder faintly heard Nangong Wuk's words. Delay it? Why would he delay it? The elder was somewhat dumbfounded. The City Lord's mansion had personally sent someone to invite him, yet he just ran away and asked him to delay it. Nangong Wuk was indeed Nangong Wuk. He was as unreliable as ever. At this moment, Nangong Wan's mood had already calmed down. She coquettishly looked at Bu Fang and said with a smile, "Owner Bu, what kind of gift do you want?" The surrounding diners all shivered. She was too charming. How could they bear the fact that their goddess spoke in such a tone? Bu Fang was flabbergasted as he looked at Nangong Wan. What the hell was this woman up to this time? Why did she have to talk so much when it came to eating? It's nothing. Saving Nangong Wuk was just a matter of convenience. What do you want to eat? Just tell me, Bu Fang said expressionlessly. Indeed, saving Nangong Wuk had been a simple matter. He had only needed a bowl of dragon blood rice, and he hadn't had to go through any hardships or obstacles. If he had needed 100 servings of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup to save Nangong Wuk, Bu Fang would have left without hesitation. 100 servings of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Bu Fang felt that even if he sold that clown Nangong Wuk, he wouldn't be able to get that many crystals. Nangong Wan still wanted to say something, but her beautiful eyes turned, and she said with a sweet smile, "All right, Owner Bu, give me the Buddha jumps over the wall soup." Owner Bu's Buddha jumps over the wall soup was absolutely delicious. It was the most delicious dish Nangong Wan had ever eaten. "Okay, let's wait," Bu Fang said. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked toward the kitchen. After Bu Fang's figure disappeared, Nangong Wan's gaze turned toward Yu, who was sitting on a chair in the distance. The gazes of the two women collided in the air, and sparks seemed to flicker. Perhaps this was the rumored hostility of women. The atmosphere in the store suddenly became strange. Although the remaining customers wanted to continue watching the gossip, they had already finished their dishes, and they felt uncomfortable in this atmosphere. Moreover, the cold gaze of the store's goddess, which swept over them from time to time, caused their bodies to tremble, and goosebumps appeared on their skin. It was too frightening. After hesitating for less than 3 seconds, the customers turned around and left the store. Nangong Wan was the only one left in the store, and she was sitting on a chair. After a short while, a rich fragrance wafted out of the kitchen. That fragrance was like silk, and it lingered in the nostrils of people. "You serve the dishes." Bu Fang's voice came from the kitchen's window. Yu, who was already drooling over the fragrance, immediately stood up when she heard Bu Fang's voice. She took a step forward, and it seemed as if she had teleported to the front of the window. Bu Fang looked at the excited Yu in astonishment. What kind of nonsense was this woman planning? After she carried the Buddha jumps over the wall soup away, Yu's eyes lit up. She lowered her head, and she placed her face on the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She sniffed the fragrance coming from the jar. When Bu Fang saw Yu's actions, he raised his brows. This woman wouldn't eat the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, right? As if reflecting Bu Fang's guess, Yu only took a few steps before she lifted the lid of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, which was emitting a golden radiance. A rich fragrance surged out of the jar. Fragrant. It was especially fragrant. Yu's fair and beautiful face became flushed because of the steam coming from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Nangong Wan was dumbfounded as she looked at the beautiful woman. She casually waved her hand and took out a piece of meat from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She opened her mouth wide and swallowed the piece of meat that belonged to her. What the hell? Aren't you a waiter? Shouldn't this woman give me the Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Why did she eat it? Nangong Wan felt as if her mind was in a mess. She couldn't understand the Netherworld woman's actions. How was this the behavior of a waiter? It was simply a bandit. Nangong Wan, who was somewhat angry, stood up from her seat. She wore an ice-cold expression and said, "What are you doing? That's my Buddha jumps over the wall soup." Sizzle. Yu calmly glanced at Nangong Wan with her pitch-black eyes. She raised the jar and drank a mouthful of the soup. A warm current flowed into her stomach, and she couldn't help but let out a breath. It was delicious. She was able to eat a new dish. Bu Fang, who was leaning against the kitchen's door, rubbed his forehead. He was somewhat speechless. As expected, you started eating again. He had brought back a glutton who could eat even more than the Lord Go. The Lord Go drowsily opened his eyes and glanced at you. He snorted and said, "Nonsense. The Lord Go loves the sweet and sour ribs the most. He doesn't eat ordinary dishes. That lassie can eat even more than the Lord Go." You carried the jar of Buddha jumps over the wall soup and ate as she walked. She walked to Nangong Wan's seat and pulled a chair over to sit down. She was still eating without stopping. Nangong Wan was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. Her curves were extremely eye-catching. Her beautiful face was so angry that it had turned somewhat pale. "You, little sister." Just when Nangong Wan was about to say something, outside the store, a hoarse howl suddenly rang out. Nangong Wan was bewildered, and so was Bufang. Nethery, who was still munching on her food, also looked up. What was going on? Nangong Wuk rushed into the store with his arms wide open. His face was filled with grief. However, when he saw Nangong Wan's gaze, which seemed as if she was looking at an idiot, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was fine as long as nothing happened. He turned his head and saw you, who was eating the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Nangong Wuk's heart trembled. When he saw you, his heart trembled. This woman was extremely terrifying. However, since she was in Owner Bu's store, she would probably restrain herself a little. Nangong Wuk heaved a long sigh of relief. However, before he could completely relax, Nangong Wan's next words almost caused him to lose his breath. "Owner Bu, this woman is casually eating the dishes ordered by the customers. Aren't you going to say anything? This kind of waitress will affect the store's image. Aren't you going to fire her?" Nangong Wan's words stunned everyone. Bufang Yu and even the yawning Lord Go were stunned. Nangong Wuk's heart trembled, and his legs became weak. "My little aunt, you don't know anything about the truth. Do you know what kind of terrifying existence you are talking to?" Nangong Wuk's heart became cold. He looked at you in fright. As expected, the woman with long black hair shook her hand and stopped eating. She looked at Nangong Wan. Chapter 480. Don't. Nangong Wuk's heart shuddered and his legs trembled. He was afraid that the Netherworld woman would get angry. Once this woman got angry, even 10 Nangong Wans wouldn't be able to withstand her rage. Nangong Wuk took a step forward and stood in front of the Netherworld woman. He looked at her with a sincere gaze. "It's fine. If you like it, then eat more. My younger sister was just joking with you. You are so beautiful, so how could my younger sister scold you? She loves making friends with beautiful people." Nangong Wuk wore a flattering smile on his face. He blinked his eyes and looked at you with a sincere gaze. Yu's mouth was covered in oil, but her face was expressionless. She shot a glance at Nangong Wuk and furrowed her brows in disgust. She turned her head away and continued to eat from the jar. After Nangong Wuk appeased you, he heaved a sigh of relief. Nangong Wan widened her eyes and looked at Nangong Wuk in disbelief. This idiot was actually helping an outsider? Who was joking? Did this woman eat my Buddha jumps over the wall soup? It was worth 10,000 crystals. She glared at Nangong Wuk, who turned his head and smiled bitterly. He rubbed Nangong Wan's face. "She is so beautiful. If she likes it, then let her eat it. I will treat you," Nangong Wuk said with a smile. "Old Bu, give me another bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup." After Nangong Wuk spoke, he turned his head and looked at Bufang, who was leaning against the door. Bufang nodded, turned around, and entered the kitchen. Since these two women didn't cause any trouble, he decided to forget about it. Nangong Wan wasn't an unreasonable person, but she couldn't help but snort angrily in her heart as she sat on her seat. You ate happily. The more she ate, the more excited she became. She was too lazy to care about Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk. "Nangong Wuk, if you don't give me a reasonable explanation when we go back, I will beat you up," Nangong Wan said angrily as she waved her fist. "A reasonable explanation. I am afraid that I will scare you." Nangong Wuk smiled bitterly. With a lingering fear in his heart, he looked at Nethery in the distance and sighed. After a while, Bufang finished cooking another bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. However, this time, he didn't let you carry it out. Instead, he personally carried the porcelain jar out of the kitchen. After placing the jar in front of Nangong Wan, he pulled out a chair and sat opposite her. He turned his head to look at you, who was holding a porcelain jar and pouring the thick soup into her mouth. The corner of his mouth twitched. Nangong Wan seemed to be still angry. She was panting with rage as she ate the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. However, as she ate, her anger dissipated, and she immersed herself in the delicacy. Nangong Wuk heaved a sigh of relief. He leaned against the chair and looked at the two of them with a bitter smile. Bufang looked at him with interest. Old Bu, I have something to tell you. The area where your store is located is the newest area to be developed. Therefore, it is considered a backward industrial area of the Nangong family. Recently, the Lin and Zhang families have been targeting our Nangong family. Therefore, they might start with these industries. I hope that you will be careful. Nangong Wuk said. Bufang was taken aback. He nodded his head. According to Nangong Wuk, someone would come to cause trouble. Oh, I understand. Bufang replied indifferently. Currently, he wasn't afraid of someone causing trouble. Therefore, he didn't take Nangong Wuk's words to heart. Currently, he wasn't worried about someone causing trouble. Instead, he was worried about how to spread the fame of his store. It wasn't an easy task to spread the fame of his store throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City. Heavenly Mist City was too big. It was much bigger than the Light Wind Imperial City. Even back in the Light Wind Imperial City, Fong Fong's little store's fame was only spread out by chance. It could even be said that in the entire Light Wind Empire, Fong Fong's little store's fame wasn't that prominent. Now that he was in the Heavenly Mist City, it was even more difficult to spread his fame. Let me ask you something. Bufang looked at Nangong Wuk. He felt that since Nangong Wuk was the successor of a great family, he should know some methods to spread his fame. What is it? Nangong Wuk was startled. He looked at Bufang in puzzlement. Could it be that Bufang wanted him to take this terrifying woman away? If that was the case, he would turn around and leave without a second thought. He would never come back to the Cloud Mist restaurant again. He believed that Bufang wouldn't do such a crazy thing. Moreover, Bufang's question wasn't about this. If I want my store's fame to spread throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City, do you know any way to do so? Bufang asked earnestly. After Bufang asked this question, Nangong Wuk sank into deep thought. Thump Yu, who was at the side, had finally finished eating the entire jar of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She wiped her red lips with her slender and white hand and placed the jar on the table. A dull thud resounded. Nangong Wuk, who had sunk into deep thought, jumped in fright. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, the Netherworld woman was very satisfied. She stood up and walked towards the Path Understanding Tree while swaying her long black hair. In the end, she returned and sat beside Lord Dog. Although the Path Understanding Tree's grade wasn't high, the aura it emitted made Lord Go and the Netherworld woman feel very comfortable. I do have a way. My Nangong family is one of the top families in the Heavenly Mist City. We have many businesses, so it's easy for us to spread our name. Many alchemy grandmasters were promoted through our businesses. Their fame has already spread throughout the Heavenly Mist City. Nangong Wuk said. Bufang's eyes lit up. Can we promote the store? It can be done, but it will be very difficult. The Nangong family's businesses are mainly related to elixirs. If we promote our alchemy grandmasters, we will be able to attract a lot of people. If we promote the store, Old Bu, you should know how awkward the restaurant business is in the Heavenly Mist City, Nangong Wuk said helplessly. It wasn't that he didn't want to help Bufang, but the price of promoting the store was too high. Moreover, there might not be anyone who would buy it. This gave him a headache. Bufang furrowed his brows. Did he really have to set up a stinky tofu stall in a crowded place to attract people's attention and make a name for himself? The amount of work required was too great. Bufang was very lazy, so he didn't want to do it. Brother, if I remember correctly, the Magical Hand Conference is about to start, right? Nangong Wan, who was eating happily, suddenly said. Nangong Wuk was taken aback. He immediately grabbed Bufang's hand in delight. Old Bu, little Wan is right. You can participate in the Magical Hand Conference, Nangong Wuk said happily. Nangong Wuk was pleasantly surprised. With your culinary skills and your miraculous dishes, it is enough for you to stand out in the grand ceremony. This grand ceremony will be watched by everyone in the Pill Palace. Once you obtain a good ranking, your name will definitely spread throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City. No. It will spread throughout the entire Pill Palace. Magical Hand Conference? Bufang asked doubtfully. He calmly took his hand out of Nangong Wuk's hand. It is a competition organized by the Pill Palace. There are no restrictions on the number of participants, but most of them are alchemists. Of course, there are also some doctors and poison masters. Old Bu, as a chef, you are also a master. You can try it. Don't you want to make your store famous? That's perfect, Nangong Wuk said. As long as you can get into the top 10, the competition will be broadcasted to the entire Pill Palace through a special projection spirit array. At that time, everyone will know you. When the time comes, you can advertise your store during the competition, and it will become very popular. Nangong Wuk's words made sense, and he was speechless. Bufang's eyes lit up. Wasn't this the same as advertising in his previous world? Hey, Nangong Wuk, are you a pig? Those who can participate in the Magical Hand Conference are all monstrous geniuses of the Pill Palace. Even 3 Clouds alchemists will participate. Do you think that Owner Bu can get into the top 10 with his culinary skills? Do you really think that alchemists are trash? Nangong Wan glanced at the 2 people who were laughing foolishly at the side and couldn't help but pour cold water on them. It was true that Owner Bu's dishes were delicious, and they even had the same effects as elixirs. However, as an alchemist, Nangong Wan had her own judgment about the effects of his dishes. Even the most delicious and expensive Buddha jumps over the wall soup was only comparable to a 9th-grade elixir. It was much weaker than a 1-mark spirit elixir, let alone a 2-mark or 3-mark spirit elixir. The effects of those elixirs would definitely be superior to the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. If the Buddha jumps over the wall soup couldn't compare, how could Owner Bu compete with those powerful alchemists? Egg fried rice or sweet and sour ribs? There was no way to compare them. Nangong Wuk also calmed down. After thinking about it, he realized that Nangong Wuk's words made sense. He gave Bufang a helpless expression. However, Bufang was very calm. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he looked at Nangong Wuk with a burning gaze. How can I participate in the Magical Hand Conference? Egg fried rice? Sweet and sour ribs? Or Buddha jumps over the wall soup? The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. You guys haven't seen a real elixir cuisine. You guys don't know anything about the truth. Chapter 481. Nangong Wuk left. Now that he had become the head of the Nangong family, there were many things that he needed to do. The reason why he rushed to the Cloud Mist restaurant was because he was afraid that Nangong Wan would accidentally provoke the Netherworld woman. Now that everything was progressing in a good direction, he naturally had to leave as soon as possible. Bufang didn't send him off. He sat on his seat and sank into deep thought. According to what Nangong Wuk said, if he wanted to spread the fame of the Cloud Mist restaurant, the Nangong family alone wouldn't be enough. If that was the case, then he would have to participate in the Magical Hand Conference. But how should he participate? Should he register? After returning to his senses, Bufang looked at Nangong Wan, who was happily eating beside him. He asked, If I want to participate in the Magical Hand Conference, should I register? Also, where is the registration location? Nangong Wan put down the porcelain jar. Her face was slightly rosy because of the heat from the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Her beautiful face became even more tender and beautiful, and she emitted an enchanting aura. Owner Bu, are you really going to participate in the Magical Hand Conference? Actually, Nangong Wan didn't think that Bu Fang's chances of winning in the conference were high. After all, Owner Bu was a chef, not an alchemist. How could he compete with high-grade spirit pills refined by high-grade alchemists? That's right. I want to spread the fame of my store, Bu Fang said without any hesitation. He was really serious about it. When Nangong Wan saw Bu Fang's resolute expression, she knew that it was impossible for her to get Bu Fang to give up on this idea. Thus, she only hesitated for a moment before she charmingly smiled. If Owner Bu wants to participate in the conference, then he won't be participating as an alchemist. Instead, he will be participating as a person with special gift. In Heavenly Mist City, the registration location for people with special gifts is in the south of the city. If Owner Bu wants to go, then I will bring you there tomorrow morning, Nangong Wan said with a smile. Her beautiful eyes seemed to contain a smile that wasn't a smile as she looked at Bu Fang. Going to the south of the city to register? Heavenly Mist City had even set up a registration point. Bu Fang didn't know where the registration point was, so he couldn't refuse Nangong Wan's request, so he could only nod. All right, let's go together tomorrow morning. Nangong Wan's beautiful eyes lit up when she heard Bu Fang agree. Nangong Wan took out several high-grade crystals from her bosom and handed them to Bu Fang before leaving the Cloud Mist restaurant in a cheerful mood. After Nangong Wan left, it was finally time for the store to close. Bu Fang stood up and closed the bronze door. Putting away the porcelain jar on the table, he turned around and walked toward the kitchen. Yu's pitch-black eyes stared at Bu Fang until he disappeared into the kitchen. Only then did she turn around. Beside him, Little Black was sound asleep, sleeping soundly. The Netherworld woman stood up and put down the chair. With a wave of her hand, the Netherworld ship appeared once again and smashed into the ground, giving rise to a strong gale. The gale caused the fur on the Lord Go's body to flutter. Lord Dog, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened his eyes. He angrily glanced at Nethery, who had climbed into the Netherworld ship. This lass. Can't you let the dog sleep properly? Bu Fang returned to the kitchen and practiced his knife technique for a while. Bu Fang's progress with the Overlord 13 blades was very slow, and it was a stark contrast to the meteor knife technique, which allowed him to quickly master it. Bu Fang was also helpless. He knew that he couldn't rush this kind of matter. A good chef, an experienced chef, could stay in the kitchen for dozens of years and spend their entire life honing their knife technique and cooking skills. A truly good knife technique could only be honed with time. After practicing for a while, Bu Fang returned to his room. After taking a bath, he laid on his bed and fell asleep. His breathing quickly became even. It was a pitch-black night. 2 bright moons hung in the sky and emitted a cold radiance. It was as if a thin veil was spread on the ground. In the area where the Nangong family sold multi-taste fasting pills, dozens of people clad in black robes quietly appeared. These people were all wearing masks, and their faces couldn't be seen clearly. However, their bodies emitted a powerful aura. The person leading them was a divine physique echelon expert who could communicate with heaven and earth. This is one of the Nangong family's properties. According to the master's orders, destroy all the shops here so that they won't be able to open for business tomorrow. Yes. All the black-robed people replied in unison. Then, the figures of these people burst out and scattered in all directions, moving in pairs. True Qi surged up, and with a loud explosion, an elixir store was directly blown up. Bricks and stones flew in all directions and fell all over the ground. A black-robed man leaped high into the air and slashed down with a long saber in his hand. Saber-Chi swept out and cut the elixir store in half. There were dozens of elixir shops in this area. However, they were all destroyed tonight. Some of the elixir shops still had some low-grade elixirs. Because the buildings were destroyed, these elixirs rolled out and were crushed by the black-robed person. The two black-robed people sped along and suddenly saw a restaurant. Isn't this an elixir shop? Why is there such a big restaurant here? The two black-cloaked men were puzzled as they looked at each other suspiciously. This restaurant building. Are we going to destroy it? I wonder if there are people living in it. One of the black-robed people said. They were somewhat hesitant. They dared to destroy elixir shops because no one lived in them. The owners of the elixir shops would collect the valuable elixirs at night and bring them home. They would leave the elixir shops behind. As for the restaurant, it was hard to say. Perhaps the owner lived in it? Who cares? What if this restaurant is also one of the Nangong family's properties? We might be able to make a great contribution. One of the black-robed people clenched his teeth and said coldly. After that, the two of them didn't hesitate anymore. Their true energy soared into the sky and their gazes became sharper. They activated their true energy and rushed toward the building. Buzz, blade energy and sword energy wreaked havoc. With a tyrannical aura, they attacked and wanted to completely destroy the restaurant. However, soon after, the two black-robed people were dumbfounded. After they attacked, they didn't see the restaurant collapse. Could it be that their attack was fake? The restaurant was still intact. Every brick and tile was neat and tidy. The restaurant stood in the middle of this area and it seemed very out of place. Let's try again. The two black-robed people looked at each other and nodded. With great tacit understanding, they launched another attack. This time, they exerted 100% of their strength. They wanted to destroy the restaurant with absolute certainty. An invisible broadsword slashed down with a loud rumble. This time, the black-robed person saw it clearly. After his true energy blade slashed down, it stopped several meters away from the restaurant. It couldn't move forward at all. What was going on? Why was it like this? The two black-robed people widened their eyes. Their faces under their masks were filled with disbelief. Could it be that there was a magic array here? However, they didn't feel the aura of a magic array. I'll help you. The other black-robed person didn't believe it. He angrily snorted and his true energy soared into the sky. It seemed as if he had turned into a huge flaming meteor that smashed down from the sky. Its power was astonishing. In the distance, the commander of the black-robed people furrowed his brows. What the hell were those two doing? They made such a huge commotion. Were they afraid that people wouldn't know that they were destroying the Nangong family's property? He moved his feet and was about to rush out. However, just as he took a step forward, his whole body stiffened. Those who disturb people's dreams will die. The two black-robed people looked at the peerless beauty standing on the roof in fear. Her long black hair seemed to flicker under the illumination of the two bright moons. However, the ice-cold pressure that filled the air made it difficult for them to breathe. The true energy blade and the flaming meteor smashed down. Before they could get close, the woman waved her hand in the air. It was as if she was wiping away a stain. The two black-robed people's attacks disappeared just like that. In the next instant, the two black-robed people's eyes were filled with fear. Their black hair stuck out from their neck. They only had enough time to see the woman on the roof disappear before they completely lost consciousness. You slowly retracted her black hair and moved her long and fair legs. She tapped the ground with her sparkling feet and turned around. She just happened to meet the black-robed leader's gaze, which was almost suffocating. Scram or die, you said expressionlessly. Chapter 482. Scram or die. His voice wasn't loud, but it was extremely clear in this pitch-black and quiet night. It was as if it was ringing in the ears of the black-robed commander. There was no killing intent, only an ice-cold indifference. He looked at his two subordinates helplessly lying on the ground. Fresh blood flowed out and dyed the ground red. The pungent smell of fresh blood permeated the air, causing everyone's hair to stand on end. "Who are you? Aren't you being a little too ruthless?" Suppressing the fear in his heart, the black-robed commander coldly said. A light flashed in his hand, and a long silver spear appeared. If there were people from Heavenly Mist City here, they would be able to recognize this person's identity upon seeing this long spear. The commander of the Zhang family, Silver Spear Zhang He. He was a famous expert in Heavenly Mist City. He had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles, and his battle prowess was extraordinary. However, such an expert had a grave expression on his face at this moment. The hand that held the silver spear seemed to be drenched in cold sweat. The pressure that the barefooted beauty with long, black hair gave him was too great. This woman was very strong. She was definitely very strong. Yu's face was ice-cold. She was always this cold to others. Her pitch-black eyes started to move, and the white of her eyes were completely black. "If you don't scram, then die." An indifferent voice resounded in the dark night. Her black hair fluttered even though there was no wind. It suddenly spread out, and it seemed to block the moonlight. Zhang He was enraged, and he let out a long roar. The pores on his body opened up, and true energy gushed out. It seemed to transform into a thin layer of mist that enveloped his body. A spear pierced out, and it tore through the sky. It was like a beam of light that flashed through the night. A chain of vital energy appeared behind him, swaying continuously. Yu's pitch-black eyes were deep and bottomless. She tapped the ground with her sparkling white feet, and her figure flickered like a ghost. That silver spear pierced out, but it was directly swallowed by a wave of darkness. Drip. Her black dress fluttered, and Yu's thumb tapped on the ground. It seemed to have tapped on the gravel, making a slight sound. At this moment, her long hair was like a waterfall. Zhang He maintained the posture of thrusting his spear. His entire body was completely covered by her pitch-black hair. Yu's slender hands rested on her waist. She was expressionless as she turned her head slightly and looked behind her. Instantly, the strands of hair began to move, tightening and sliding. "Kacha!" The sound of bones breaking rang out. Zhang He couldn't even let out a groan before he was killed. Swoosh! Her hair retracted and spread behind her back. Her long hair reached her waist and was exceptionally beautiful. The moonlight shone on her once again, illuminating her breathtakingly beautiful face. "Commander is dead?" The faces of the black-robed people in the surroundings were instantly filled with terror. Some of them did not say anything and just turned around and ran. "This woman is a demon." It was a demon that had crawled out from hell. Hair could kill. If she wasn't a demon, then what was she? However, after running away for a few steps, those people widened their bloodshot eyes and discovered that their feet were wrapped by black hair. The hair expanded and completely swallowed them. Dozens of experts, including a divine physique echelon expert who had broken through one of the Supreme Being's shackles, were killed in a few breaths. If this scene spread out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Corpses were strewn all over the ground. Yu strode forward with her slender legs, stepping in the air as she returned to the roof of the Cloud Mist restaurant. She raised her hand, and the moonlight shone on her hand, making it look hazy. It looked like a white jade. She waved her hand, and a formless fluctuation spread out. The corpses lying on the ground crumbled one after another, turning into dust and dispersing. Only blood was left on the ground, and the pungent smell of blood permeated the air. The darkness in her eyes disappeared, and the white of her eyes became white once again. The netherworld woman expressionlessly scanned her surroundings. In the next moment, her figure gradually became indistinct and disappeared. Within the store, the Lord Go's nose twitched slightly. He opened his drowsy eyes and shot a glance at Yu, who was crawling into the netherworld ship. He asked in a gentle and magnetic voice, "Is everything settled?" Yu was startled. She turned her head to look at the Lord Go and nodded. With you here, Lord Go, I can relax a lot. It would be even better if I didn't have to fight over the sweet and sour ribs with the Lord Go. The Netherworld woman opened her red lips. With a chuckle, he climbed into the Netherworld ship. This girl. The Lord Go lazily rolled his eyes and went back to sleep. Early the next morning, Bufang was woken up by the miserable cries of pigs being slaughtered. Bufang got up from his bed and rubbed his drowsy eyes. He looked around in confusion. What happened? He got off his bed and walked toward the place where the miserable cries were coming from. He went to the window and looked into the distance. The ground was filled with crushed stones and shattered elixirs. A large number of elixir store owners were kneeling on the ground and weeping bitterly. What happened? Bufang opened his eyes wide. How could so many elixir stores collapse in a single night? The elixir store owners were the most miserable ones. Some of them relied on their elixir stores to make money and support their families. They had to spend a lot of money to rent their stores from the Nangong family. Now that something like this had happened, it was a huge blow to them. Some of them were sighing in despair, while others were weeping bitterly. Some of the elixir store owners, who were extremely angry, were pounding on the restaurant's bronze gate. They probably thought that the culprit was Bufang. The elixir stores in the surroundings had all collapsed, and only this restaurant was still standing. It was impossible for them not to misunderstand the situation. The people of the Nangong family quickly rushed over. They were led by an elder of the Nangong family. This elder had a profound look in his eyes. After asking for some information, he fixed his gaze on the restaurant. The bloodstains on the ground attracted their attention. What on earth happened here last night? The rich true energy in the blood indicated that the person who bled had a powerful cultivation. Perhaps, as long as they found the person who bled, they would be able to find out the truth. However, the elder's guess was that the Lin and Zhang families were the culprit. After all, such rumors had already spread. Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk also rushed over. How could they not come over to take a look at such a major incident? The destruction of one of the Nangong family's businesses wasn't a trivial matter. Nangong Wan was quite resourceful. She comforted the weeping elixir store owners and promised that she would refund them the rent. Only then did the store owners relax. Nangong Wan's elixir store was also destroyed. However, she knew that this incident had nothing to do with owner Bu. It was definitely done by the Lin or Zhang families. They had to find out the truth of this matter. Bufang changed his clothes and went downstairs. He opened the bronze door and leaned against it. Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk walked over and greeted him. Many of the store owners were still glaring at him. Their gazes made Bufang frown slightly. Owner Bu, we know that this incident has nothing to do with you. Don't worry, we will find the culprit. Our Nangong family won't suffer such a great loss for nothing. Nangong Wuk patted his chest and promised Bufang. Nangong Wan was in a bad mood. After all, her elixir store was also destroyed. She wanted to come over and repair it today. She didn't expect that such a thing would happen. Owner Bu, the registration for the Magical Hand Conference is in the southern part of the city. Are you free now? I'll go with you, Nangong Wan said as she took a deep breath. I'm not free now. I haven't eaten breakfast yet, Bufang said. Nangong Wan's face stiffened. She was somewhat speechless. If you want to eat, come in and have a taste. Just remember to leave some crystals, Bufang said. He then turned around and walked toward the kitchen. Nangong Wuk and Nangong Wan's eyes lit up. When Nangong Wuk saw you climb out of the Netherworld ship, he acted like a mouse that had seen a cat. He turned around and left. Nangong Wan was somewhat baffled by his actions. You climbed out expressionlessly. She yawned and stood up straight. The Netherworld ship buzzed as it was put away. Nangong Wan's gaze was fixed on you. Suddenly, her pupils constricted. You combed her hair, causing it to fall like a waterfall. A dense smell of blood spread out from her hair. A drop of ice-cold blood stained Nangong Wan's face. She subconsciously raised her hand and wiped it off, leaving behind a blood-red hand. Chapter 483. Was this blood coming from that woman's body? Why was there blood? What did that woman do? Nangong Wan's heart was filled with doubts. She looked at Nethery's hair with a solemn expression. She had a feeling that this beautiful woman wasn't simple, and it wasn't just because she was afraid of her. Just the aura emanating from her body was enough to make Nangong Wan's heart palpitate. After Nethery combed her hair, she raised her head lazily and looked at Nangong Wan. She seemed a little surprised as to why this woman kept staring at her. However, Nangong Wan didn't pay much attention to her. She turned around and went to the kitchen, looking at it expectantly. She knew that it was time for breakfast. The fragrance in the kitchen was very rich, and it didn't take long for it to drift out. Nangong Wan was sitting on a chair. Her sitting posture was quite elegant. Her slender, white, and beautiful legs were crossed over her other leg, exuding a mature charm. Sitting beside her was Yu, who couldn't wait to eat. From time to time, she would turn her head to look at the kitchen. She looked like a foodie. What made Nangong Wan even more speechless was the fact that on the other side of her, there was a black dog that had appeared out of nowhere. It was also slapping its paws on the table and sticking out its tongue, waiting for its breakfast. Nangong Wan, who was sitting between a woman and a dog, felt awkward. What the hell? Soon, a rich aroma wafted out from the kitchen, and a slender and thin figure walked out from the shadows of the kitchen. He was holding a steaming hot dish in his hands. This person was Bufang. Bufang raised his brows when he saw this strange combination. He didn't pay much attention to it. Blackie, your sweet and sour dragon ribs. Yu, your dragon blood rice. Bufang placed the dishes in front of Yu and Blackie. He glanced at Nangong Wan and went to the kitchen. After a short while, he came out with 2 steamers of steamed buns. These are soup dumplings. They taste good and are suitable for breakfast. After Bufang gave Nangong Wan a steamer, he also found a place to sit down and prepared to start eating. Now, in the restaurant, Bufang would occasionally study some new dishes. This soup dumpling was the latest dish that he had researched. Actually, it couldn't be considered research. After all, he had made it in his previous life. Xiaolong Bao was different from ordinary steamed buns. The skin of the steamed buns was smooth and light. After being steamed, it seemed to become transparent. There was no thick soup inside like the soup dumplings, but it was full of fragrance. That was because of the filling of the steamed buns. The delicious steamed buns were so delicious that one wouldn't get tired of them even after eating more than 10 steamers. It was just right for breakfast. Nangong Wan widened her eyes as she looked at the steamed buns in front of her. The steamed buns were giving off a delicious aroma that attracted her. The others around him had already begun to gorge themselves on the food. The dog was chewing on the porcelain plate, smacking its lips non-stop. That ice-cold woman grabbed the rice with her hands and kept stuffing it into her mouth. Her table manners were simply terrifying. It's really delicious. Nangong Wan used her chopsticks to pick up a soft Xiaolong Bao and gently bit into it. The skin of the steamed bun was immediately bitten open, and a delicious aroma surged out and circulated in her mouth. The taste of the filling of the steamed buns instantly surged out and caused her whole body to tremble. As soon as the steamed bun entered her stomach, it was so delicious that she couldn't help but moan. Bufang was already eating happily. In fact, he could have prepared a dipping sauce, but Bufang was too lazy to do so, so he didn't make it. If a special dipping sauce was added to the Xiaolong Bao, its taste would be extremely delicious. This time, the Lord Go learned his lesson. When you licked the last grain of dragon blood rice into her mouth, he also finished the sweet and sour ribs. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lip. He looked at you and let out a complacent laugh. Then, the Lord Go ran back to the Path Understanding Tree and went back to sleep. Eating, sleeping, and eating. This was the daily routine of the Lord Go. Yu, who had finished her dragon blood rice, looked at the Xiaolong Bao in Bufang's cage. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Bufang didn't choose to open for business. Instead, he closed the bronze gate and left the store with Nangong Wan. They were going to the southern part of the city to register for the Magical Hand Conference. Every clan had a fixed number of participants, and those who signed up were usually some rogue cultivators or some unknown doctors or poison masters. Alchemists always looked down on these kinds of people, as they believed that they walked the path of unorthodox cultivation. This was indeed the case. Even the best doctors couldn't compare to a spirit pill. However, there would always be many doctors and poison masters participating in the Magical Hand Conference. If they managed to get into the top 50, they would be able to gain a great deal of popularity. Being able to gain a great deal of popularity was not a bad thing for them. The southern part of the city wasn't very flourishing. Heavenly Mist City was the same as most big cities. The center of the city was the most flourishing area, and the farther one went from the center, the more barren it became. In the center of the city, one could see many tall bronze buildings. However, once one reached the southern part of the city, the number of tall buildings would decrease. Most of the houses were low and they were old. Nangong Wan seemed to be quite familiar with the southern part of the city. She led Bufang through a few alleys, and as if she was walking through a maze, they arrived in front of a tall building in the southern part of the city. This is the registration point. Every year, the registration point for people with special gifts is here, Nangong Wan said. Bufang looked at the building, narrowed his eyes, and nodded his head. This was because he saw many people in strange clothes walking in and out of the building. The aura emitted by these people wasn't strong, but it was very strange. Some of them were wrapped in gray robes, and they emitted a gloomy aura. Some of them wore white robes, had a beard, and had a peaceful expression on their faces. They were poison masters and doctors, people who didn't have any talent in alchemy, and they had opened up their own domains. Nangong Wan led Bufang into the building. The interior of the building was unexpectedly bustling with noise and excitement. There were many poison masters and doctors. Bufang was a little dazzled by what he saw. After squeezing through the crowd for a long time, they finally arrived in front of a small house. "Owner Bu, this is the registration point. The old man inside is an acquaintance of mine," Nangong Wan said with a smile. She glanced at Bufang before pushing open the door and entering the house. Bufang followed her inside, and he saw a one-eyed old man reading a book in the room. When the old man noticed that someone had entered, he raised his head. "Miss Nangong, why are you here?" The one-eyed old man stood up in surprise. Nangong Wan was an alchemist of the Nangong family. The one-eyed old man recognized her, but he didn't understand why she would come here. This was the registration point for people with special gift. "Uncle Fu, this is a friend of mine. He wants to participate in the Magical Hand Conference," Nangong Wan introduced. The one-eyed old man was taken aback for a moment, then he understood why Nangong Wan would come here. "Fine. Tell me your name, cultivation level, and occupation." The one-eyed old man returned to his seat and took out a thick registration book. As he flipped through the book, he asked Bufang. "Bufang, cultivation level, 9th grade supreme being, occupation, chef." Bufang replied expressionlessly. The one-eyed old man nodded his head and started to write down the information. "Occupation, poison master? Huh?" The one-eyed old man raised his head and looked at Bufang in surprise. This young man was fair and clean, and he didn't look like a poison master who made himself look like a ghost. Nangong Wan's mouth twitched and she said, "Uncle Fu, my friend isn't a poison master. He's a chef." "Chef? Wait. Are you talking about the chef who cooks in the kitchen?" The one-eyed old man was taken aback, and he looked at Nangong Wan with a strange expression. A chef also came to register for the Magical Hand Conference. Was this a joke? He, the one-eyed Uncle Fu, was in charge of the registration of people with special gifts. He had seen countless poison masters, doctors, and even massage masters. However, he had never seen a chef before. Other people took part in the competition to use medicine, but you took part in the competition to use dishes? Cooking on the stage? Just thinking about it made him feel that it was somewhat comical. Young Miss Nangong, are you making fun of me? What's the point of a chef participating in this conference? I won't allow him to register. The one-eyed old man felt that Nangong Wan and Bufong were making fun of him. When he heard that he wasn't allowed to register, Bufong furrowed his brows. Is there a rule that says chefs can't participate in the conference? Bufong asked. The one-eyed old man was taken aback. There really wasn't such a rule. When people with special gifts signed up, there wasn't any rule that stated that they couldn't participate in the conference. But a chef? This was too absurd. Then register for me. The outcome is up to me. What does it have to do with you? Bufong calmly said. The one-eyed old man raised his brows. This lad was a little domineering. The one-eyed old man coldly smiled and put down the pen in his hand. He looked at Bufong and said, You are really confident. You can register, but after the registration, there will be an examination. You need to show that you are qualified to participate in the conference, or else get lost. Chapter 484. The attitude of the lad in front of him made Fu Ba feel somewhat uncomfortable. What did he mean by the outcome being decided by him? He was in charge of the registration and was also the person in charge of the preliminary selection. There were more people with special abilities than alchemists. After all, there weren't many people in this world who could become alchemists. However, there were many people who couldn't become alchemists. Those who couldn't become alchemists would change their profession and become poison masters or doctors. If so many poison masters and doctors came to him to register and all of them chose to participate in the competition, wouldn't he have to record the names of the participants for the entire day? Wouldn't the ceremony be in a mess? A chef. To put it nicely, he was a chef, but to put it bluntly, he was just a chef. Why would a chef join in the fun? Moreover, how many chefs were there in the Heavenly Mist City? If there were really such amazing chefs, the restaurants in the Heavenly Mist City wouldn't have closed down because of the fasting pill. Compared to alchemists, chefs were innately inferior. Teacher, I heard that young Miss Nangong has come. Just as the two of them were at each other's throats, the door was suddenly pushed open and a figure walked in from the outside excitedly. It was a young and handsome lad with bright eyes. He seemed extremely spirited. He was Fu Ba's disciple, a young doctor with superb medical skills. Young Miss Nangong, long time no see. You are still as charming and beautiful as ever. When the young man saw Nangong Wan standing in the room, a trace of passion flashed in his eyes. Nangong Wan nodded with a smile and didn't say much. Uncle Fu, why don't you register my friend? He really wants to participate in the Magical Hand Conference this time. The one-eyed old man glanced at the expressionless Bufong and sneered inwardly when he recalled the arrogant words Bufong had said. I can register him, but I have to be fair. If young Miss Nangong's friend can't even pass my selection, then don't blame me for rejecting him. Jing bring this young master to participate in the selection with the 5th squad. The young man was taken aback. He looked at Bufong in surprise and nodded. Come with me, the young man said. Then, he led Bufong out of the house. Nangong Wan didn't follow him. Instead, she left the house with the one-eyed old man and walked toward the spectators' area. Do you see that seat? Walk over there and tell the person in charge that you are participating in the qualifier. They will arrange it for you. But I say, what is a chef like you doing here? The young man glanced at Bufong and said somewhat speechlessly. No matter how amazing a chef was, how amazing could he be? Physicians and poison masters could be considered as derivative occupations of alchemists. At the very least, there was hope for them to surpass alchemists. You're just a chef, and you want to challenge an alchemist? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at? I'm afraid that you are the first person in history to participate in the Magical Hand Conference as a chef. I hope that you will be able to pass the selections. Otherwise, if you can't even pass the selections, you should go home, wash up, and sleep. The young man sneered. It wasn't that he looked down on Bufang, it was just that his idea was too bold. Bufang glanced at the young man and didn't say anything. There were some things that didn't need to be explained, and Bufang didn't feel like explaining it to him. Moreover, the young man didn't have the qualifications to make him explain. These people, they knew nothing about the occupation of chef. As he looked at Bufang, who was walking toward Bufang, a sneer appeared in the young man's eyes. He turned around and walked toward the spectators' area. Nangong Wan was still there. Are you here to participate in the qualifier? Tell me your occupation and stand to the side. An examiner indifferently glanced at Bufang and said, Bufang chef, Bufang said. The examiner was startled. He furrowed his brows and said, Speak clearly. What kind of chef are you? Chef, Bufang said, as if he was looking at an idiot. The examiner was slightly dumbfounded. He had seen doctors and poison masters before, but this was the first time he had seen a chef. Where did this kid come from? Since he was able to participate in the test, it was obvious that he had passed Uncle Fu's registration. How was he going to arrange the test? The examiner felt a headache coming on. He glanced at Bufang and waved his hand. Go and join the group over there. In a while, the 5 of you will be tested together. The examiner will judge whether you are qualified to participate in the Magical Hand Conference or not based on your work. Bufang indifferently nodded his head and walked toward the group of 4 people in the distance. On the spectators' area, the one-eyed old man was leaning against a chair and talking cheerfully with Nangong Wan, who was beside him. Although the Nangong family was in a precarious situation, the old man didn't try to befriend Nangong Wan. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. No matter how desolate the Nangong family was, he couldn't afford to offend them. Young Miss Nangong, your friend is really interesting. Isn't a chef supposed to stay in the kitchen and cook? Why did he come to participate in the Magical Hand Conference? However, I didn't expect that there would be a chef in our heavenly Miss City, the old man said with a smile. Uncle Fu, don't look down on my friend. His culinary skills are something I have never seen before, Nangong Wan said. She believed that Bufang's culinary skills would definitely amaze the world. When she tasted his dishes, which were comparable to elixirs, she was shocked for a long time. It was a shock to her mind. The taste was better than elixirs, but the effects weren't any weaker than elixirs. This was simply inconceivable. There weren't many chefs who could reach such a level. It seems like young Miss Nangong is very confident in your friend. Let's wait and see. Uncle Fu didn't believe that a chef could be so amazing. He was a top-notch doctor, but he was crushed by a one-cloud alchemist. How heaven-defying could a chef be? Let's wait and see. The selection is about to begin, Nangong Wan said calmly. It was a huge arena, and there were many windows on the ceiling above the arena. Light shone down from the ceiling, making the arena extremely bright. The 5 people from Bufang's team stepped onto the arena. There were 5 bronze platforms on the arena, and they were each assigned to take the test. They had to complete the test on those bronze platforms. Bufang touched the crudely made bronze platform. Bufang furrowed his brows when he felt the prickling sensation. The examiner took a few steps forward and stood in the center of the arena. He started explaining the rules of the selection to them. Actually, there weren't any rules. Everyone had to refine a piece of work, and its effects had to be at least at the level of an 8th grade elixir. Only then would they be considered to have passed the selection. This requirement wasn't high. In fact, it could be said that it was quite low. After all, refining an 8th-grade elixir wasn't difficult for an alchemist. High-grade alchemists would refine spirit elixirs, and their medicinal effects would be terrifying. Bufang looked at the people around him. They were all calm and unperturbed. It was obvious that they were very confident in their skills. Uncle Fu, who was on the spectators' stand, smiled at Nangong Wan and said, "These 4 people are all extraordinary people with special abilities. If young Miss Nangong's friends were to encounter them, it would be difficult for them to stand out." Nangong Wan just smiled and didn't say anything. She believed in Onerbu's skills. Bufang could also feel the confidence of these 4 people. It was a kind of affirmation of his strength. Because they were sure of it, they were confident. Okay, let's start the test now. The time limit is 2 hours. Those who exceed the time limit will be eliminated. The examiner wore a solemn expression as he swept his gaze over everyone and announced loudly. As soon as he finished speaking, the people on the arena started to move. This test attracted a lot of people. Just as Uncle Fu said, the 4 people on the stage were quite famous among the eccentrics. Naturally, their test was also very interesting. Of course, some people also noticed Bufang, who was mixed among the 4 people. Quite a few people revealed sympathetic gazes. Meeting these 4 fellows, wanting to stand out from the crowd, the difficulty was too great. This kid should be participating in the selection for the first time. He looked unfamiliar, and his luck was also very bad. It was obvious that the crowd didn't have any hope for Bufang. When Bufang took out the black turtle constellation wok and smashed it on the bronze platform, the whole arena became silent. Then, an intense uproar and sneering laughter erupted from the crowd. Was this guy here to make a joke? Taking out a black wok? Was he going to cook? Chapter 485. No one had expected that Bufang would take out a wok. Everyone could clearly see that it was really a wok, and not an alchemy furnace used by alchemists to refine elixirs. At first, some people thought that what Bufang took out was an alchemy furnace, but after they saw it clearly, they all burst out laughing. Their laughter was filled with mockery. I thought that an alchemist had appeared. In the end, it turned out to be a wok. Is he using a wok to refine elixirs? Is this kid a doctor? Nonsense. Have you ever seen anyone using a wok to refine elixirs? Even if he is a doctor, he will use a furnace to refine elixirs, okay? The group of people in the audience started to discuss and argue. The 4 people in the arena were the ones who were close to Bufang, so they could clearly see that it was really a wok. Not only was there a wok, but there was also a kitchen knife. When Bufang took out the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, the whole area went into an uproar. Oh my God! What was he doing? Was this kid going to cook? A chef also came to participate in the selection? Was he trying to impress the crowd? Everyone was confused. Everyone was puzzled. A kitchen knife and a wok. When these 2 symbolic tools appeared, no one would believe that Bufang wasn't a chef. Uncle Fu was speechless. He smiled and said, "Young Miss Nangong, this time we really made a fool of ourselves." However, contrary to his expectations, Nangong Wan's complexion didn't become unsightly. Her red lips curled up slightly, and it seemed as though there was a profound meaning behind it. Uncle Fu looked at Nangong Wan deeply before his gaze continued to fall on the arena. The 4 people thought that Bufang had come here to make a fool of himself, so they didn't pay much attention to Bufang. True energy revolved around their bodies as they took out bronze furnaces from their spatial spirit tools. Among these 4 people, 3 of them were doctors, and 1 of them was a poison master. However, regardless of whether they were doctors or poison masters, refining elixirs required medicinal furnaces. A medicinal furnace was naturally inferior to a pill furnace, but compared to a pill furnace, a medicinal furnace was easier to control. Stalk after stalk of spirit herbs were placed on the bronze platform. These spirit herbs exuded a rich medicinal fragrance. Spirit chi also soared into the sky like strands of silk, intertwining with each other, affecting one's state of mind. One of the doctors narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. He crushed a spirit herb and poured it into the medicine furnace. He lit the fire and started the furnace. The furnace immediately turned scarlet red. After a long time, hot steam rose from the furnace. A red fruit was taken out by a doctor. This doctor's gaze was extremely focused. He suddenly pinched the fruit with both of his hands and twisted it in a strange way. The skin of the fruit was peeled off. This move made many people exclaim in admiration. A doctor's method of handling medicinal ingredients was the key to refining medicine. If the medicinal ingredients were not handled properly, how could one refine a good medicine? A poison master wrapped in a gray robe with a sinister aura was holding a long snake with shining scales in his hand. The long snake flicked its pitch-black tongue, and it was extremely poisonous. The poison master's expression did not change. He pinched his palm and ruthlessly cut a hole in the snake's body. His thumb and index finger dug into the hole and dug out a pitch-black snake gall. He brought the snake gall to his nose and smelled it. The corners of the poison master's mouth curled up. There were fewer poison masters than doctors. This was because becoming a poison master was very risky. After all, they had to deal with poisons. However, they were very clear that it was easier for a real poison master to challenge an alchemist than a doctor. As the saying goes, high risk is accompanied by high reward. Although poison masters were dangerous, it was precisely because of this danger that the medicinal effects of the medicine they refined were even more astonishing. There was once a poison master who managed to squeeze into the top 30 in the Magical Hand Conference. This caused a sensation for a while. One must know that the top 50 seats were reserved for alchemists. It was simply a miracle for someone with special abilities to be able to squeeze into the top 50. The 4 participants displayed their skills one after another. Although it was only a selection, none of them dared to slack off. This was because every time they concocted a pill, they would need to put in a lot of effort. Otherwise, if they made a small mistake, it would mean that they had failed. That price was not something they could afford. All of a sudden, when the 4 contestants were completely focused on refining medicine, a faintly discernible stench suddenly drifted over from afar. A stench? Who failed in refining medicine? Who burned the furnace? This was the first thought that appeared in many people's minds. However, very quickly their noses twitched. They felt that something was wrong. That stench didn't seem like the smell of a burnt furnace. A doctor couldn't help but turn his head toward the direction where the stench came from. He saw that Bufang had taken out a clay pot and placed it on the bronze platform. The stench was coming from the bronze platform. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun, and it was like a shooting star flashing past. The audience only saw a blur before they saw the ingredients being cut. When the ingredients were poured into the wok and stir-fried, sizzling sounds rang out continuously. Looking at the steam rising from the wok, everyone was dumbfounded. This kid was really cooking on the stage. If he was so awesome, why didn't he ascend to the heavens? A faint fragrance accompanied by a faint stench. This kind of mixed smell made the audience feel a little strange. The 4 contestants on the stage also retracted their gazes. They didn't mind it at all. Although the smell was a little strange, as long as it didn't affect their performance, it would be fine. While they were engrossed in refining the elixir, Bufang began the next step. He walked to the front of the earthen jar on the bronze platform and casually patted it. The lid of the earthen jar was slapped open. Instantly, the originally faint stench became even stronger. It was as if someone had released a stinky fart in front of their noses. What the F***ck? What the hell is this? Why is it so smelly? What is this kid doing? Why is it so smelly? Is that pot filled with **T? Cooking? I don't believe him. Where did this clown come from? Is he cooking **T? The audience's faces instantly became bitter. They covered their noses with their faces full of shock and anger. They watched as Bufang, who wore an incomparably calm expression, fished out pieces of black objects from the clay jar. The sticky, stinky juice flowed down in the spectator stand. Fu Ba's face became somewhat dark, and blue veins popped out on his forehead. Nangong Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't expect that owner Bu would actually bring that dish here. He was trying to stir up trouble. Young Miss Nangong, this isn't right. This kid is a poison master, right? Otherwise, why would he take out such a disgusting thing? Fu Ba's face became somewhat dark. He felt as if he had been made a fool of by Bufang. Chef, your head. Sizzle. Bufang flicked the dragon bone kitchen knife, and a piece of pitch-black stinky tofu fell into the wok, splashing the oily juice. The stench rose and became even more intense. In an instant it covered the entire region. Bang! An explosion resounded. In the distance, a doctor covered his throat and leaned against the bronze platform with tears in his eyes. The medicine stove in front of him exploded, and the medicinal powder scattered all over the ground. It's so stinky that I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. The doctor's anger surged, and he fiercely glared at Bufang. This guy was definitely doing this on purpose. The other two doctors didn't look any better. They were covering their noses, and their complexions were dark as if they had been poisoned. Their medicine stoves were shaking unceasingly, and it was obvious that they were on the verge of exploding. Due to the dense stench, they were somewhat unable to control their energy. The only one who wasn't affected was the calm poison master. He looked at Bufang in astonishment, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. So, you're in the same profession. This is really vicious. The poison master took a deep breath, and the stench entered his nose. It was really stinky. But, I like it, the poison master said with a smile. He threw a pitch-black hairy spider into the medicine stove, and a flame sprang up. The temperature rose abruptly, and a faint pitch-black gas filled the air, along with a stench. Bang! 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 Several explosions resounded, and the medicine stoves of the remaining two doctors also exploded, sending medicinal powder flying everywhere. The three doctors' complexions were somewhat dark. Since their medicine stoves had exploded, didn't that mean that they wouldn't be able to pass the selection? This was simply too vexing. How could there be such a disgusting person? Bufang's complexion was indifferent. He flipped the stinky tofu in the wok, and the stench also changed. After a long time, he scooped out the deep-fried stinky tofu and placed it in a porcelain bowl. Then, he poured the previously cooked spicy sauce over it. A serving of fragrant spicy stinky tofu was finished. With a sizzle, the 10,000 bestial flames returned to his mouth, and he put away the black turtle constellation wok and the dragon bone kitchen knife. Bufang held the bowl of fragrant spicy stinky tofu, and he looked at the examiners, who were covering their noses and gaping in shock. 3 steel-like gazes shot toward Bufang from the side, and it slightly surprised him. When he turned his head to look, he saw the murderous gazes of the 3 doctors. What's going on? Bufang was stunned, and he didn't understand what was going on. Chapter 486. What's wrong? You still have the face to say that? When the doctors saw the innocent expression on Bufang's face, they were so angry that they clenched their teeth. They wished they could take off their shoes and throw them at Bufang's face. If it wasn't because of the mess you cooked and the strong stench that affected their thoughts, how could they have accidentally exploded their furnaces? It was all because of this damned fellow. They had thought that this lad was harmless, and that he was just here to make some soy sauce. To hell with soy sauce. Who would have thought that this lad was actually so evil? He actually cooked something that smelled like sh*t on the stage in broad daylight. How shameless was he? Bufang was speechless as he looked at the 3 doctors who wanted to bite his flesh. Were they stupid? Ignoring them, Bufang turned his head to look at the examiner and calmly said, "This is my work. I finished it within the allotted 2 hours." At this moment, the examiner came back to his senses. Although he was still shocked, he moved closer to take a look at the dish in Bufang's hands. His appearance was unexpectedly good-looking. Although Bufang's plate presentation technique hadn't received any systematic training, he still had the foundation from his previous life. Thus, the appearance of the dish was quite impressive. At the very least, it was pleasing to the eye. After being an examiner for so many years, this was the first time that he had seen someone cook on the stage. He was somewhat curious. When he took a sniff, the smell of the dish immediately drifted over and entered his nose. His face darkened. "What is this smell?" The examiner almost vomited as he looked at the sweet, spicy, stinky tofu with a frightened expression. "It stinks," Bufang replied expressionlessly. "Are you a poison master?" "Poison masters nowadays have learned to keep up with the times. You actually made such a disgusting thing. Are you trying to disgust people?" The examiner glared at Bufang. The 3 doctors who weren't far from him also widened their eyes and nodded their heads. "Sir Examiner, you should directly disqualify this fellow from the competition. If he used this kind of disgusting thing in the Magical Hand Conference, it would be a disgrace to our heavenly mist city." The 3 doctors were filled with righteous indignation and unanimously demanded that Bufang be disqualified from the competition. Bufang furrowed his brows and turned his head to look at the 3 doctors. Were these 3 fellows stupid because of the stench? "Don't talk. If you talk again, I'll beat you up," Bufang said calmly. "Yo-ho! This kid actually dared to be so arrogant?" The 3 doctors were enraged. Why would they be afraid of Bufang? Some of them had broken through the Supreme Being's shackles and became divine physique echelon expert. The other 2 were also at the supremacy stage. Why would they be afraid of a mere supremacy stage kid? "Tell me, how do I use this thing? Eat it directly?" The examiner stopped the 3 physicians who were about to make things difficult for him. Instead, his gaze fell on the fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu. "Of course we eat it directly," Bufang said. "Eating something that smells like sh*t?" The examiner swallowed his saliva and glanced at Bufang. He realized that the latter's gaze was very sincere. It was an encouraging look. On the spectator stand, Uncle Fu and Nangong Wan looked at this scene. "It seems like that kid has finished his dish. Let's go down and take a look," Uncle Fu said. After he spoke, he walked down from the spectator stand. He wanted to see how capable this arrogant kid, who dared to enter the Magical Hand Conference as a chef, was. Was that dish really what he was relying on? The examiner was still hesitating. After Nangong Wan and Uncle Fu walked down, he still didn't choose to eat the fragrant spicy tofu. When he saw Uncle Fu, his eyes lit up. "Sir, you've come," the examiner said respectfully. "Is this the dish that kid cooked?" Uncle Fu squinted his eyes as he looked at the fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu. The 2 unique scents of fragrant and pungent odor mixed together, giving people an unusual experience. When Uncle Fu saw the dish, his eyes widened. The main reason was that the smell that wafted out of the dish made his hair stand on end. When he was on the spectator's stand, the stench he smelled was unbearable. When he smelled it at such a close distance, the stench became even more intense. It was even more stinky than the stench of an ordinary poison master. "Chef, this is a chef?" Uncle Fu felt as if his worldview had been overturned. "That's enough. You don't need to feel embarrassed. I'll taste this dish myself, and I'll test this person." Uncle Fu pursed his lips and said. The examiner felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He placed the plate in Uncle Fu's hand and hid far away, staring at Uncle Fu. "Uncle Fu, do you want to taste it? If you don't, then I'll start eating." Nangong Wan smiled warmly. The stench didn't affect her in the slightest. Compared to the stinky tofu that Owner Boo had cooked in front of the restaurant, this spicy stinky tofu smelled much better. Uncle Fu was flabbergasted by Nangong Wan's words. As the princess of the Nangong family, she actually wanted to taste such a disgusting thing. Could it be that there was some secret behind it? He used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of stinky tofu. When the chopsticks caught the yellowish stinky tofu, a rich oily juice immediately flowed down from the stinky tofu. The stench was disgusting. Uncle Fu felt his stomach churning. He was really putting his life on the line. Uncle Fu closed his eyes and stuffed the stinky tofu into his mouth. He steeled his heart and chewed. A soft and creamy feeling filled his mouth. It felt like smooth milk caressing his skin. The taste was unexpectedly good. Uncle Fu opened his eyes in astonishment and asked in surprise. The surface of the stinky tofu had absorbed a lot of the oily juice. When he bit it, the oily juice flowed out, bringing with it a rich fragrance. If Uncle Fu's first impression was that it was stinky, then he would think that it was tender, and then he would think that it was fragrant. Why did he think that it was fragrant when he ate it? Uncle Fu felt as if his head had been damaged by the stench. However, this feeling came from his taste buds. It was an extremely wonderful feeling. This thing wasn't stinky at all. Uncle Fu's eyes widened and his face was filled with disbelief. This was the biggest reversal, and Uncle Fu hadn't expected it. He used his chopsticks to pick up another piece of stinky tofu and stuffed it into his mouth. Uncle Fu ate it in a daze. Munch munch, Uncle Fu ate faster and faster, and his speed became more and more astonishing. The three doctors were dumbfounded. They couldn't understand the emotional expression on Uncle Fu's face. Spicy, refreshing, and fragrant. The fragrant, spicy, stinky tofu caused Uncle Fu's heart to palpitate. The three doctors were dumbfounded. What had happened? Why did Uncle Fu, who had a fiendish look on his face, suddenly become intoxicated? Was that excrement-like thing not bad? It's delicious. It's really delicious. Uncle Fu exclaimed in admiration. Bufong was quite calm. This wasn't beyond his expectations. Moreover, the main point of this dish wasn't its taste, but the spiritual energy and effects contained within it. Sure enough, Uncle Fu's body shook. After eating several pieces of stinky tofu, he felt as if the true energy in his body had started circulating at an extremely fast speed, and the impurities in his body seemed to have been flushed out. Puff! Everyone was dumbfounded by Uncle Fu's farts. Nangong Wan was the first to react. She covered her nose with her sleeves and quickly retreated. Bufong also distanced himself from Uncle Fu without saying anything. The appearance of this stinky fart was because the impurities in Uncle Fu's body had been flushed out. Every time Uncle Fu farted, he felt as if his body had become much lighter. He felt as if he had become much younger. This kind of experience was too refreshing. The effect of this dish was even stronger than the 9th grade elixir, the body-tempering pill. Uncle Fu exclaimed inwardly. That kid wasn't just talking nonsense. The dish he cooked had the same effect as a 9th grade elixir. It was simply inconceivable. He had actually misjudged Bufong. The stench of a stinky fart was even more stinky than the stinky tofu. Bang! An explosion resounded. The poison master on the stage was dumbfounded. His furnace had exploded, and green medicinal powder spread out. That stinky fart was so stinky that it made him, the poison master, lose his mind and cause his furnace to explode. The poison master's heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. He was on the verge of tears. He was about to finish the dish. He hated it so much that he almost went crazy. Didn't they say that they were birds of a feather? Uncle Fu was a little embarrassed. However, this was uncontrollable. He couldn't stop his smelly fart. After he farted a few times, the effect of the dish weakened. Uncle Fu's mind became much clearer. The effect of this dish had amazed him. Good, good, good. I passed. Uncle Fu said, pleasantly surprised. Bufang's culinary skills had actually reached such a level. It was truly inconceivable. The examiner and the 3 doctors were dumbfounded. How could he pass the test like that? It wasn't fair. Bufang didn't care about their protest. Since he had already obtained a spot to participate in the Magical Hand Conference, Bufang naturally wouldn't stay here any longer. He had to go back to his business. He turned around and walked out of the hall. Your Excellency Bufang, you have already obtained a spot to participate in the conference. Don't forget to come to the Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza to participate in the preliminary round 3 days later. Bufang's figure gradually disappeared into the distance. Uncle Fu, who had just recovered from his shock, quickly shouted at Bufang's back. Uncle Fu was somewhat excited. He suddenly felt that Bufang's appearance might be the hope of this year's Magical Hand Conference. Perhaps this kid could even create a new record. Elder Fu, we can't accept this. That kid's dish disturbed us. Why didn't you disqualify him from the competition? The 3 doctors angrily looked at Uncle Fu and demanded an explanation. They were all people with great potential. They had the chance to enter the top 50. How could they accept being eliminated in the preliminary round? Moreover, the kid who caused them to be eliminated easily obtained a spot to participate in the competition. This was something they couldn't accept. Uncle Fu calmly glanced at the 3 doctors. He licked his lips and didn't say anything. He just passed the last piece of stinky tofu on the porcelain plate to them. You will know after you taste it. The 3 doctors were stunned. They looked at each other in dismay. They looked at the stinky tofu on the porcelain plate and pursed their lips. Chapter 487. Nangong Wan felt that it was a pity that she didn't get to taste the stinky tofu made by Bufang. She had initially rejected the stinky tofu, but after tasting it, she became intoxicated. She was clear about the magical power of this delicacy. It was an extremely mystical dish. After leaving the southern part of the city, the 2 of them sat in the Heavenly Mist City's Spirit Beast carriage and returned to the Cloud Mist restaurant. The outside of the restaurant was still in a mess, and many of the people sent by the Nangong family were busy repairing the place. As such, there were many people coming and going outside the restaurant, and it was quite lively. After Nangong Wan sent Bufang to the restaurant, she sat in the Spirit Beast carriage and went back. Her elixir store was destroyed, and she couldn't let this matter go easily. She had to find the culprit and teach him a lesson. An angry woman was the most terrifying. At this moment, Nangong Wan was somewhat terrifying. However, all of this had nothing to do with Bufang. When Bufang returned to the store, he opened the door for business. Perhaps it was because the elixir store was destroyed, but the number of customers had decreased. However, Bufang was happy to be free. He pulled a chair and curled up at the entrance of the store. The warm sunlight shone down on his body, causing him to feel drowsy. You walked around the store barefooted. She was also somewhat bored. She copied Bufang and pulled a chair to sit at the entrance. However, after sitting for a while, she couldn't stand the sunlight and ran away. She sat cross-legged beside Lord Go and blanked out expressionlessly. In the Nangong family's courtyard, Nangong Wuk's face was gloomy as he clasped his hands behind his back. Did you find anything? Who was the culprit behind last night's incident? Nangong Wuk asked in a dignified voice. Family head, I found out that it should be someone from the Zhang family. Last night, the Zhang family's commander, Zhang He, went missing and hasn't returned yet. The Zhang family is furious, but they didn't say anything. There is something fishy about this, an elder said with a frown. Nangong Wuk paced a few steps and nodded. He squinted his eyes and said, something is indeed wrong. According to the Zhang family's nature, the disappearance of a commander should have caused a search in the whole city. But now there is no movement at all. Unless they have a guilty conscience, they don't dare to search for him. But Zhang He's disappearance. Why did he disappear? Could it be that Zhang He is dead? The elder was puzzled. Nangong Wuk's heart thumped. He suddenly recalled that the store was still in good condition. It was highly possible that Zhang He had been killed by the people in the store. After all, if Zhang He wanted to destroy the store like he destroyed the elixir store, he would definitely anger the powerhouse in the store. Who in the store could kill Zhang He without making a sound? Who else could it be other than that terrifying woman? As he thought of this, Nangong Wuk couldn't help but shiver. Prepare a spirit beast carriage for me. I'm going to make a trip to the Zhang clan. We can't let this slide for nothing. We have to get back at them. The elder was startled and looked at Nangong Wuk in a daze. All right, Nangong Wuk had become much more reliable. The Heavenly Mist City's teleportation array was bustling once again. Many experts were teleported over. Every time they teleported, there would be many people. It wasn't just the teleportation array. Outside the city, there was a continuous stream of huge battleships. On those battleships were experts from various factions. The alchemists from the Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City, the two big cities of the Pill Palace, all came in group. After all, the Magical Hand Conference was being held in the Heavenly Mist City. Heavenly Pill City, Mysterious Capital House. There was a battleship with the words, Mysterious Capital House, painted on it. The Mysterious Capital House was the best elixir store in the Heavenly Pill City, just like the Flowing Cloud House in the Heavenly Mist City. Actually, every top elixir store had a top alchemist overseeing it. This time, there was a Four Clouds alchemist on the Mysterious Capital House's battleship. He was one of the judges for the Magical Hand Conference. The Brilliant Sun House of Heavenly Shine City also had a battleship. With the addition of the alchemists from the Pill Towers of the Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City, the lineup this time could be said to be extravagant. The Heavenly Mist City was the weakest among the three Pill Cities. The main reason for this was that there was only one Four Clouds alchemist overseeing the entire Heavenly Mist City. There were 5 Four Clouds alchemist judges, and 4 of them were experts from the Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City. The Heavenly Mist City's City Lord personally came out to welcome them. He brought all the great alchemists to the City Lord's mansion for a gathering. The Heavenly Mist City immediately became lively. Buzz light flickered within the array. An expert wrapped in a black robe appeared. He carried a bronze coffin on his back, and he emitted a sinister aura. Did my 2 junior brothers die in the Heavenly Mist City's secret realm? I heard that many of them survived. My puppet sex people died. How did they survive? He raised his head, and his eyes, which were hidden under the black robe, were extremely cold. The Wind and Thunder Pavilion's experts also walked out of the teleportation array. Xiao Chongyun's death was a huge blow to the Wind and Thunder Pavilion. After all, Xiao Chongyun's identity wasn't ordinary. Naturally, someone had to come and investigate. Xiao Chongyun wasn't the only one. Many of the factions that lost their disciples in the secret realm made a comeback, and they sent even more powerful disciples. A man with a giant sword on his back stepped out of the Grand Baron Sek's array. He was the Overlord Demon Sword Venerable Shimen Xian, who was ranked 3rd among the Grand Baron Sek's 10 great geniuses. He was a swordsman who had comprehended sword intent with a heavy sword. He was one of the 3 most outstanding people among the Grand Baron Sek's younger generation. His cultivation was extremely powerful, and he had broken through 3 Supreme Being shackles. The ancient Shura city's experts also returned. Misha respectfully stood beside a young man. This young man had a noble status, and he was a direct descendant of the ancient Shura city's Shura imperial family. Lord Tong He. The Shura Tower is in Heavenly Mist City. I saw it with my own eyes, Misha respectfully said. Tong He, who had blood-red hair and an incomparably handsome face, took a deep breath and said, I sensed an extremely strong aura from the Shura Tower. The Shura Tower is our ancient Shura city's sacred object, and we can't lose it outside. Numerous experts appeared one after another, and the heavenly mist city was in a state of turmoil. However, no matter how turbulent the heavenly mist city was, Bufang was still leisurely lying on his chair, basking in the sun. He was always so lazy, squinting his eyes as he quietly watched the clouds roll by. When a customer came over, he would enter the kitchen to cook, and after he finished cooking, he would continue lying in front of the door. His laziness caused many of the customers to not know whether to laugh or cry. The flat ground outside the restaurant had been cleaned up, and only debris was left on the ground. The collapsed walls were all taken away, and the area suddenly became much more spacious. Only a single restaurant stood there, and it was extremely dazzling. The number of customers gradually decreased, and the Nangong family's members also returned home. Bufang curled up on his chair, and he looked at the afterglow of the setting sun, which elongated the restaurant's shadow. In the distance, two figures slowly approached. They were two figures wrapped in blood-red robes, and their blood-red hair was illuminated by the setting sun, which made them seem even more resplendent. Bufang calmly looked at the two people walking toward the restaurant. Misha looked at Bufang, who was sitting in front of the restaurant, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless. After all, Bufang was someone who survived the terrifying blood-red man, and he definitely had some powerful methods up his sleeve. Misha knew how terrifying the blood-red man was, and that was why he respected Bufang even more, regardless of how weak Bufang's cultivation was. Tong He, who was beside him, curled up his lips, and his handsome face was like an exquisite work of art. The Shura Tower's aura is emitted from that person's body. It seems like the person who obtained the Shura Tower in the end is that ant, who hasn't even broken through the Supreme Being's shackles. Chapter 488. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, the two figures were elongated. Bufang stood up and stretched his body. He was about to close the bronze gate and end the day's business. Two figures slowly approached from afar. As they stepped on the crushed stones on the ground, a creaking sound could be heard as they walked toward the store. Tong He's gaze was calm and his blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. His gaze landed on Bufang's body, or rather, the small tower on Bufang's neck. That was the Shura Tower. Tong He didn't know why, but he suddenly became excited. After searching for so long, he finally saw the Shura Tower with his own eyes. Sir, endure it. This kid is not simple. Misha looked at the excited Tong He and his heart trembled. He hurriedly pulled his arm and shouted at him. Tong He calmed down after hearing Misha's words. If what Misha said was true, then the kid in front of him was definitely very capable, since he was able to snatch the Shura Tower from the hands of that terrifying existence. He really needed to be more careful. Tong He tidied up his clothes and walked toward the store with a solemn expression on his face. Bufang looked at the two people walking toward the store with a puzzled expression on his face. Although they looked familiar, he couldn't remember where he had seen them before. However, since he couldn't remember, he was too lazy to think about it. Tong He first sized up the store before looking at Bufang with a gentle gaze. Are you the owner of this restaurant? Bufang was startled. Yes. Tong He's gaze landed on the small tower on Bufang's neck. A trace of desire and greed appeared in his eyes. It was the Shura Tower, the sacred artifact of the ancient Shura city. How could such an item be allowed to wander around outside? Tong He's gaze caused Bufang to furrow his brows. Misha's expression changed, and he hurriedly pulled Tong He's arm to remind him. Tong He came back to his senses and took a deep breath. He smiled apologetically at Bufang. This is the first time I've seen a restaurant in Heavenly Mist City. Can I have a taste of your culinary skills? Since he couldn't snatch it by force, then he might as well take a roundabout route and try to get close to him first. Tong He thought to himself, I'll investigate this guy's strength first before making a decision. Oh, so you're here for a meal. Today's business is over. Come back tomorrow. Bufang came to a realization, but after a moment of realization, he calmly said. He took a step back and was about to close the bronze door. Tong He was dumbfounded. Why did the store close? They had already seen the Shura Tower. If they were to leave just like that, Tong He naturally felt somewhat unwilling. He raised his palm and pressed it against the bronze door. Wait. I can pay many times the price, Tong He shouted. Did Bufang look like the kind of person who would waver over the store's principles for money? Of course, if the system's rules were changed, Bufang might really consider it. However, with the system's rules, Bufang was too lazy to argue with Tong He. He calmly glanced at Tong He's hand that was pressed against the door. Tong He felt somewhat sullen in his heart. He clenched his teeth and unwillingly released his hand. He was an existence that had broken through 3 of the Supreme Being's shackles, yet he was being treated like this by an ant. He was simply infuriated. Sir, calm down, Misha hurriedly said. Bang! With a loud sound, Bufang closed the bronze door. Tong He was closer to the door, so he was slammed in the face. The cold wind blew against his hair, causing his entire body to tremble. No one had ever dared to treat him like this. In the ancient Shura city, everyone was respectful when they saw him. He didn't expect that an ant-like brat would dare to ignore him and even slammed the door in his face. I can't take it anymore. Today, even if I have to rob someone, I will take back the Shura Tower. Tong He took a deep breath and coldly said. As soon as he finished speaking, a majestic wave of true energy surged from his body. His hair fluttered in the wind and his eyes lit up. Tong He raised his palm, and a vortex of true energy revolved in his palm. Just as he was about to break through the door, a voice suddenly rang out. With a creak, the bronze door suddenly opened. Tong He and Misha were dumbfounded. When the bronze door opened, the person who appeared wasn't Bufang. Tong He's pupils shrank, and when he saw the beautiful woman with long black hair, his true energy trembled. Why did a woman appear here? Moreover, it was such a beautiful woman. Yu's ice-cold gaze landed on Tong He. Her indifferent gaze caused goosebumps to rise all over Tong He's body. Did you change your mind? Are you going to let us in? Tong He retracted the true energy on his body and smiled gently. He mustn't lose his poise in front of a beautiful woman. However, he didn't notice that Misha, who was beside him, had an expression as though he had seen a ghost. Misha's complexion was deathly pale, and his lips trembled. The moment he saw Yu, he felt as though he was struck by lightning. Tong He didn't know who Yu was, but how could he, who had stayed in the secret realm, not know her? The Netherworld ship's Netherworld woman. The cursed Netherworld woman. How could this woman appear here? Wasn't the Netherworld woman supposed to stay in the secret realm? How powerful was the Netherworld woman? It was absolutely unimaginable. Encountering the Netherworld woman in the secret realm was equivalent to death. This was enough to show how terrifying the Netherworld woman was. Lord, let's leave first. Misha's heart trembled as he looked at Yu in fright. He pulled Tong He's arm. Scram. Yu calmly looked at the two of them and opened her red lips. An ice-cold word came out of her mouth. She could feel the malice coming from Tong He's body. If they were in the secret realm, she would have already attacked him. After all, a person like him wouldn't be able to survive for more than 3 seconds in front of her. Scram? Tong He was taken aback, and his face became gloomy. She asked him to scram? This woman actually didn't want to give him face. He wasn't able to see through Yu's strength, but he wasn't afraid of her. That was because Yu didn't look old, unlike those old monsters. Tong He, wasn't afraid of anyone in the same generation as him. We'll scram right now. Misha was so scared that his guts almost jumped out of his throat. Tong He sneered and raised his palm. He wanted to force his way out. He was determined to retrieve the Shura Tower today. All of a sudden, he felt as though time had stopped. A fair and slender finger slowly rose up before his eyes. Then, the finger touched the space between his eyebrows. Buzz tong, he felt as though his head was about to explode, and an intense pain instantly spread throughout his body. A terrifying force erupted from his body, and he was sent flying several miles away like a cannonball. Misha's mind trembled, and he frantically ran away under Yu's gaze. The Netherworld woman was actually guarding this restaurant. Just what kind of background did this restaurant have? Misha's mind trembled. Tong, he crawled up from the ground. He was stupefied, and fear lingered in his heart. His forehead swelled up and it turned purple. He felt as though his head was about to explode. A single finger. It was just a single finger, and he was sent flying before he could even see how that woman attacked. It was simply terrifying. Just who was that woman? There wasn't anyone in the same generation that could suppress him like that. Unless that woman was from the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. Could it be that the Hidden Dragon Royal Court was behind this restaurant? Sir, are you alright? When Misha saw that Tong he wasn't dead, he felt as though a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. There's something strange about this restaurant. From today onwards, you better keep an eye on this place. We will definitely find an opportunity to take back the Shura Tower. Tong He's heart was filled with anger, and he coldly stood up. After saying those words to Misha, he turned around and left. Misha heaved a sigh of relief. Sir Tong he was still a rational person, and he didn't rashly attack. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine how the two of them would die. After all, that woman was the Netherworld woman. It was no wonder that kid was able to deal with a man covered in blood. It turned out that he had the Netherworld woman's help. It seemed as though he had to consider this matter at length. Misha followed behind Tong He, and his mind was filled with countless thoughts. All of a sudden, he squinted his eyes, and a glint flashed through them. If the people from the Hidden Dragon Royal Court find out that there's a Netherworld woman in this store, I wonder what will happen. The Hidden Dragon Royal Court was a top-notch holy land in the Hidden Dragon continent, and it was more powerful than all the first-rate powers. Even though the ancient Shura city was powerful, it still paled in comparison to the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. However, after thinking about it for a moment, Misha shook his head. The Netherworld woman wasn't someone to be trifled with, and the people from the Hidden Dragon Royal Court weren't people to be trifled with either. 3 days quickly passed by. Early in the morning, the sunlight shone down on Bufang's body. When he opened his eyes, Bufang crawled out of his bed. After washing up, he went to the kitchen and practiced his knife technique. After he finished cooking the Lord Go and Yu's breakfast, he walked out of the store. He remembered the last words that Fu Bo shouted at him. Today, the preliminary round of the Magical Hand Conference would be held in the Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza, and he naturally wouldn't miss it. Bufang wore a long robe, and after he walked out of the store, he jumped up and took down the Cloud Mist Restaurant's signboard. When he saw the 4 words on the signboard, the corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. He carried the signboard and rushed toward the Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza. He wanted to participate in the competition, and he wanted to let everyone know that he was representing the Cloud Mist Restaurant. The rise of the Cloud Mist Restaurant would begin today. Chapter 489. The Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza was located in the center of the city, and it was surrounded by rows upon rows of tall bronze buildings. The surrounding buildings belonged to many big families. Among them, the Lin, Zhang, and Nangong families all had their own tall buildings. Other than these 3 big families, the Flowing Cloud House was also located in one of these tall buildings. Compared to the 3 big families, the Flowing Cloud House's buildings were even taller, and the decorations inside were even more dazzling. The Pill Tower was quite far away from the central plaza. After all, the Pill Tower was constantly emitting pill energy, and if it was built in the center of the city, it would affect the city. Thus, regardless of whether it was Heavenly Pill City, Heavenly Shine City, or Heavenly Mist City, their pill towers were all built in remote places. When Bufang walked along a small path toward the depths of the tall buildings that were like a forest of steel, the number of people around him gradually increased. All sorts of spirit beast carriages sped along, bringing with them a strong gust of wind and clamor. Many people saw Bufang. After all, Bufang's current appearance was too eye-catching, as he was carrying a huge signboard. The words "Cloud Mist Restaurant" were written on the signboard. What was he doing? Many people sneered when they saw Bufang's appearance, and they were speechless. Some of them also saw the words on the signboard. Cloud Mist Restaurant? A restaurant? There was a restaurant in Heavenly Mist City? Although the Cloud Mist Restaurant was very popular, it was still unknown in the entire Heavenly Mist City. Most people were still taking fasting pills. They didn't even know that there was a restaurant in Heavenly Mist City. Of course, there were also some familiar people who saw Owner Boo, and they were startled. Owner Boo? What are you going to do with the signboard? I'm going to participate in the Magical Hand Conference, Bufang said calmly as he hurried along. A chef like you is going to participate in the Magical Hand Conference? Owner Boo, don't make a fuss. Those familiar with Bufang were speechless. The Magical Hand Conference was a competition for alchemists. What was a chef doing there? Everyone thought that Bufang was joking. However, Bufang was not joking. Along the way, Bufang met quite a few familiar faces. These people were all there to watch the ceremony. After all, the Magical Hand Conference was a large-scale competition in the Pill Palace, and it was very attractive. He would be able to meet many famous alchemists, and he might even be able to meet the top executives of the Pill Palace. The top executives of the Pill Palace were all incomparably powerful alchemists. He was an idol in the hearts of the people in the Pill Palace. Compared to the doubts of those familiar with him, those who didn't know Bufang sneered when they heard Bufang say that he, a chef, was going to participate in the ceremony. After passing through the steel forest of buildings, Bufang's eyes lit up, as if there was an incandescent light flickering in front of him. All of a sudden, it became spacious. A huge square lay between these buildings, filled with a magnificent aura. Old Boo, we're here. Look over here. From afar, Bufang seemed to have heard someone shouting. Bufang subconsciously turned his head toward the source of the shout and saw Nangong Wuk and Nangong Wan waving at him from afar. Bufang was taken aback for a moment, but he still walked over. When Nangong Wuk saw that Bufang was carrying his restaurant's signboard, his expression became strange. Old Boo, why are you carrying a signboard? Aren't you here to participate in the competition? I want to spread the fame of my restaurant. If I don't take out my signboard, how will people know that I'm representing the Cloud Mist Restaurant? Bufang said, as if it was a matter of course. Alright, what you said makes sense. I'm actually speechless. Nangong Wuk remembered that the main reason Bufang participated in the Magical Hand Conference was to spread the fame of his restaurant. But isn't this a little too exaggerated? Nangong Wan squinted her eyes. She suddenly looked forward to the scene of Owner Boo winning the competition and walking down the stage with his head held high and chest puffed out. At that time, many people's eyeballs would pop out from their socket. Just as the three of them were talking, more and more people gathered in the square. In the sky, a huge metal warship descended, stirring up a strong wind. Experts wearing white alchemy robes walked out of the warship. Duan Yun's gray hair fluttered in the wind. The moment he walked out of the Heavenly Pill City's warship, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. In the Magical Hand Conference, he had to get into the top 50. Ever since he returned from the southern region, Duan Yun had been in seclusion. He constantly tempered his alchemy skills. The trip to the southern region had given him a huge shock. The dishes cooked by a restaurant were actually more powerful than his elixirs. This was something that made an alchemist feel despair. If an alchemist was defeated by a chef, how could he still have the face to call himself the noblest profession in the hidden dragon continent? Duan Yun, perform well. With your current strength, it won't be a problem for you to get into the top 50. An old man walked out of the warship behind Duan Yun. He patted Duan Yun's shoulder and said with a smile. Duan Yun turned his head and looked at the old man. His eyes were filled with respect. This old man was his teacher, the Heavenly Pill City's esteemed great alchemist, Four-Cloud Alchemist Gu He. Great Master Gu, he was also one of the judges of the Magical Hand Conference. Duan Yun nodded his head excitedly and a trace of determination appeared in his eyes. All right, go and prepare yourself. Follow your senior brothers and sisters. I hope that you won't disappoint me. This time, we are participating in an away game. Don't embarrass the Heavenly Pill City. Great Master Gu He smiled and stroked his long beard. Then, he walked away with the demeanor of an immortal. Duan Yun followed behind his senior brothers and sisters as they walked toward the square. The Heavenly Mist City's alchemy level is much lower than our Heavenly Pill City's. This time, we must let the people of the Heavenly Mist City experience the strength of our Heavenly Pill City. In the Pill Palace, our Heavenly Pill City is the strongest. Look, there is actually someone who brought a signboard to participate in the competition? Duan Yun's senior brothers and sisters looked around in surprise. All of them had their own pride. Suddenly, Duan Yun heard a senior sister cry out in alarm. He subconsciously looked in the direction the senior sister was pointing and saw a slender figure carrying a huge signboard toward the registration area. That figure seemed somewhat familiar. Duan Yun's pupils constricted, and he felt somewhat puzzled. He felt as though he had seen that figure somewhere before. However, after thinking for a long time, he couldn't recall where he had seen it before. Duan Yun was dragged by his senior brothers and sisters to register. 8 arenas were set up on the spacious ground of the central square. Since there were too many participants, the competition would take place in all 8 arenas at the same time. When Bufang appeared at the registration area with his signboard, the alchemist in charge of registration looked at Bufang as though he was looking at an idiot. This was the first time he saw a chef registering for the competition. It was also the first time he saw someone registering for the competition while carrying a signboard. Who invited this clown? Was he trying to increase the effect of the program? Old Boo, although you registered for the special category, the rules of the preliminary round are different. Your opponent might be a poison master, a doctor, or an alchemist. You must do your best and don't get eliminated too quickly, Nangong Wuk said as he prepared to leave. After Nangong Wuk took his number plate, he prepared to leave. Before he left, he gave Bufang a few words of warning. Bufang nodded. The number on Bufang's signboard was the 8th arena, which was in the corner of the square. It was in a remote area, but Bufang didn't pay much attention to it. Nangong Wuk was assigned to the 3rd arena, which was in the middle. Nangong Wan was assigned to the 6th arena. The 3 of them were assigned to different positions, so they went their separate ways. Nangong Wuk. That idiot carrying the signboard is your friend, right? That kind of trash actually has the guts to participate in the competition. When Nangong Wuk arrived in front of the 3rd arena, he suddenly heard someone ridiculing him. He was slightly startled and turned his head to look. The person who ridiculed him was a fair-skinned man wearing an alchemist robe and emitting a powerful aura. At this moment, this man was sneering. Lin Sanpao, you don't know anything about my brother-in-law's level. Don't talk nonsense here, Nangong Wuk said calmly. Lin Sanpao, the genius alchemist of the Lin family, shook his head. Nangong Wuk was a weirdo, so his friend was also a weirdo. Your brother-in-law's level? A chef? Nangong Wuk, don't think that I'm as stupid as you. A chef definitely won't be able to pass the preliminary round. I have never heard of a chef participating in the competition, Lin Sanpao said with a mocking smile. Nangong Wuk glanced at him and waved his hand. He said in disgust, "My brother-in-law is someone who wants to create miracles. What do you know? You just need to keep your eyes open and watch." After he finished speaking, Nangong Wuk ignored Lin Sanpao and stepped onto the arena, preparing to start the preliminary round. A chef who wants to create miracles? Lin Sanpao rolled his eyes and stepped onto the arena. He thought that Nangong Wuk was joking. On the other side, in the 8th arena, Bufang also carried the signboard and stepped onto the arena in front of the dumbfounded judges. He walked toward the bronze arena that belonged to him. The dozens of contestants on the arena looked at Bufang as if they were looking at an idiot. Who the hell came to participate in the competition with a signboard? What was written on that signboard? Cloud Mist Restaurant? Was he here to participate in the competition or to open a restaurant? Wasn't his grandstanding a little too much? What happened next stunned the judges even more. Bang! Bufang smashed the heavy black turtle constellation wok on the bronze arena, causing it to be slightly flattened. He swung the dragon bone kitchen knife and placed it on the bronze arena. He then took out a chopping board and a porcelain plate. When this set of equipment appeared, everyone was dumbfounded. A kitchen knife, a black wok, a chopping board, a porcelain plate, and a signboard. Are you really planning to open a restaurant in the arena? Suke thought. Where did this clown come from? After he finished everything, Bufang raised his head and used a velvet rope to tie up his hair. He looked at the judges with a sincere expression on his face. "I'm ready." Bufang exhaled. Chapter 490. Are you ready? You're going to cook, aren't you? When the surrounding people heard Bufang's words, they were speechless. With this set of equipment, it didn't look like he was going to participate in the Magical Hand Conference. Wasn't he going to participate in a cooking competition? Perhaps it was because it was the preliminary round, but there were very few people around the arena. After all, it was only the preliminary round, so there weren't many people watching. Most people were looking forward to the semi-finals and the finals. At that time, only the truly talented alchemists would remain on the arena. That kind of battle was truly exciting and thrilling. The judges in charge of the Magical Hand Conference were all members of the Pill Tower, and every one of them was a high-level alchemist. The judge couldn't bear to watch Bufang's behavior. He walked in front of Bufang and looked at the bronze platform with a pout. He was speechless as he said, "Contestant, are you here to make a joke? The Magical Hand Conference is a very serious competition of the Pill Palace. If you are here to make a joke, please leave." Bufang furrowed his brows and looked at the judge. "Why do you think that I'm here to make a joke?" The surrounding people looked at Bufang with ridicule. He had even taken out a kitchen knife and a black wok. How could he say that he wasn't here to make a joke? Didn't you say that all people with special abilities can participate? As long as their dishes meet your requirements, it's fine. Doctors, poison masters, and alchemists can all participate. Why can't chefs participate? Bufang asked seriously. The judge's face darkened. He took a deep breath and was at a loss for words. He really couldn't answer Bufang's question. There was no rule that said chefs couldn't participate in the conference, but it was a convention. Everyone knew that it was meaningless for chefs to participate in the conference. Could it be that the dishes made by chefs could achieve the effects of medicinal powder? Even if they were effective, could they be better than spirit elixirs? Fine. Then you can continue to stay here. I want to see what you can come up with. If you are here to make a joke, I will personally throw you off the stage. The referee was a little angry and said coldly. Bufang rolled his eyes, too lazy to bother with this guy. Bufang took down the plaque on the bronze platform and placed it in front of the bronze platform. Then, he calmly prepared to start the match. The surrounding people also retracted their gazes. There were 50 contestants on the 8th ring, and about 1/3 of them were alchemists, while the rest were people with special abilities. The requirements for the preliminary round are actually very simple. Within the time limit of 2 hours, the alchemists need to concoct a 9th-grade pill, while the poison masters and doctors need to concoct a medicinal powder or medicinal liquid equivalent to a 9th-grade pill. The referee stood in the middle of the arena and announced loudly. After he finished speaking, his gaze landed on Bufang. He furrowed his brows and continued, "I hope that everyone can treat this ceremony seriously. This is a test of your abilities over the years. It's a chance for you to stand out. Don't be like a certain someone, trying to please the crowd." Everyone knew who the referee was talking about, and they all sneered. Even a chef came to participate in the Magical Hand Conference. It was quite funny. The alchemy trend in Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City was even more popular, and the fasting pill was developed in many different forms. In those two cities, restaurants were basically extinct, unlike Heavenly Mist City, where the Cloud Mist restaurant still existed. Thus, they naturally looked down on Chef. Bufang was very calm. He was very confident in his own abilities, so he remained indifferent. The sneers from the crowd didn't affect him at all. The referee said a lot, and in the end, he gave the order, and the entire plaza began to compete. In an instant, the atmosphere in the plaza changed. Bang! Waves of heat surged, and in the center of Heavenly Mist City, flames of various colors soared into the sky. These were the alchemy flames of alchemists, and their temperature was extremely high. Playing with fire was actually a skill that every alchemist had. Some alchemists practiced this skill, so it was very cool. On Bufang's stage, many alchemists possessed alchemy flames. Flames of various colors floated above their palms, and as the flames burned fiercely, the air around them emitted crackling sounds. Some of the alchemists flicked their fingers, and flames that resembled fairies danced on their fingers. It was extremely cool. Doctors and poison masters naturally didn't have the ability to control fire, and they all looked at the alchemists with envy. Their pill furnaces relied on ordinary flames, so they could only use their hands to ignite the flames. This made their pill furnaces quite inferior. In fact, flames were also the main reason why there was a gap between alchemists and doctors. The alchemists who were playing with fire felt extremely proud when they felt the envy of the doctors. They waved their hands, and their alchemy flames surged into their pill furnaces, causing the temperature of the stage to rise. These alchemists sneered at the doctors and poison masters. They had a natural sense of superiority when facing these people. The doctors and poison masters felt extremely sullen, and they turned their heads away in resentment. All of a sudden, they remembered that there was still someone at the bottom of the list. It was the kid who came to participate in the conference with his signboard. Their flames couldn't defeat the alchemists, but they couldn't defeat a chef who came to make fun of them. They turned their heads to look at Bufang's position. Boom! A ball of golden flames almost blinded their eyes. Bufang opened his mouth, and a ball of golden flames shot out. Once this ball of flames appeared, it was as resplendent as the sun, and the light it emitted was extremely dazzling. There seemed to be invisible beast roars echoing within the flames. Spirit beasts galloped, ferocious beasts roared, and sea beasts roared. All sorts of sounds bloomed within the flames. Buzz, the hearts of all the people on the 8th stage trembled. The expressions of the alchemists changed drastically. This kind of flame fluctuation. Everyone turned their heads to look, and they all saw the golden flames that Bufang had spat out. That flame was like the king of flames, and it caused the alchemy flames in their dantian to become restless. It was a kind of restlessness that wanted to worship it. Heaven and earth obsidian flame? All the alchemists sucked in a breath of cold air. That funny kid actually spat out a heaven and earth obsidian flame. The doctors and poison masters were at a loss. Their flames were ordinary flames, and they didn't have any spirituality. Therefore, they couldn't sense the evil intentions of the 10,000 bestial flame. They only felt that the flame was extremely powerful, but they didn't know how powerful it was. The judge's mouth was slightly agape. A heaven and earth obsidian flame. This kid actually had a heaven and earth obsidian flame? It shouldn't be. Aren't only alchemists able to subdue a heaven and earth obsidian flame? Could it be that this kid? The judge narrowed his eyes. Could it be that Bufang was lying to him? This kid was actually a talented alchemist? That's right. That must be it. However, Bufang's next action tore the conjecture in his heart into pieces. Bufang took out a clay pot from the system-dimensional bag, and he placed it on the bronze platform. Aside from the clay pot, he also took out many dishes. These were really dishes. They weren't famous spirit herbs. The judge stood in front of Bufang's bronze platform, and a trace of pity appeared on his face. What Bufang did next made him feel even more bitter. Not only him, but every alchemist in the arena also felt bitter. That was because Bufang actually guided the heaven and earth obsidian flame under the black rock, and he used it to cook it. This kid actually used a heaven and earth obsidian flame to cook? He's wasting the heaven and earth obsidian flame like this. Why didn't he get killed by the lightning? The judge roared in his heart. Sizzle! 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 Bufang poured some oil into the wok, and the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. He spun the knife and cut the ingredient. The ingredients that were cut fell into the wok, and Bufang stir-fried them, emitting a fragrant aroma. Everyone in the arena was speechless. Even the spectators below the arena didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was really cooking. There was actually someone cooking in the arena of the Magical Hand Conference. There were really all kinds of weirdos in a big forest. The judge stood in front of Bufang, and he stared at Bufang. Cooking with a heaven and earth obsidian flame. He wanted to see what this prodigal kid could cook up. Aren't you going to step back a little? Bufang grabbed the clay pot, and when he was about to open the lid, he suddenly felt the judge's fierce gaze, and he asked curiously, what did he mean? Why should I step back a little? Don't even think about playing any tricks. I will keep my eyes on you. The judge sneered. Keep your eyes on me. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. Fine, as long as you're happy. I just hope that you won't cry later. Bufang looked at the judge as if he was looking at an idiot. True energy gushed out from his hand, and he raised his palm, patting the clay pot. Buzz! There was a buzzing sound, and the judge's eyes lit up. He clasped his hands behind his back, and he stood in front of Bufang's bronze platform. He stared at the clay pot in Bufang's hand. Could it be that the thing inside the clay pot was this guy's trump card? The judge's neck stretched out, and he suddenly became curious. There was a loud bang. The lid soared into the sky. The judge's neck stiffened, and the curiosity on his face disappeared like water. An odor wafted out of the clay pot, and it instantly drilled into his nose. Chapter 491. When the smell from the clay jar drifted in front of the magistrate, the stench seemed to erupt in an instant, drilling into the magistrate's nostrils. The stench that was brewing in that instant caused the magistrate's curious expression to freeze in an instant. His face changed color at a speed visible to the naked eye. First, it turned yellow, then purple, then black. It was so dark that he almost vomited. What kind of smell was that? The judge's mouth bulged and his eyes widened. He retreated several steps and sat on the ground. His face was filled with despair. Bufang glanced at the judge, and the corners of his mouth rose. He leisurely took out several pieces of stinky tofu from the clay jar. Swish! The pitch-black gravy spilled out, emitting a thick stench. The stench drifted out, drifting further and further away. The judge finally understood why Bufang had asked that question. Why didn't he retreat? How would he know that the clay jar contained such a damned thing? What the hell was that thing? Feces? Below the stage, several figures widened their eyes as they watched. When they saw Bufang take out that clay jar, their eyes widened. It was because of that stinky jar that they couldn't pass the selection. This guy was the culprit. They didn't expect that Bufang would dare to take out such a stinky thing in the arena. Wasn't he afraid of causing public outrage? He casually waved his hand, and true energy covered the stinky tofu. He started to process it. Since Bufang wanted to attract people's attention, he naturally had to use the stinky tofu. The stinky tofu's stench was stinky enough to attract people's attention. Everyone was curious, and when they smelled the stench, they would want to know where it came from. If he could attract people's attention, wouldn't it be a good time to promote his cloud mist restaurant? That was why Bufang still decided to use the stinky tofu. He believed in his own skill. He wanted to use the stinky tofu to make a name for himself. The stinky tofu was enough to let him advance, and it could also increase people's curiosity about him. It would help promote his cloud mist restaurant, so why not? The smell of the stinky tofu gradually spread in the arena. Soon, the contestants in the arena smelled an odor that made their hair stand on end. What's that smell? Why is it so smelly? On the stage, everyone's expression changed. The alchemists' faces were filled with fear. In order to refine pills, they needed to use their mental energy to communicate with the alchemic fire. They did not dare to slack off in the slightest. The appearance of this smell completely affected their thoughts, causing their mental energy to become somewhat unstable. However, they were alchemists after all. They were much stronger than the doctors in the selections. Although it was affected, there was no sign of the furnace exploding. However, they were still furious. When they were concentrating on refining the pills, the stench wafted over. That feeling simply made it hard for them to breathe. Everyone angrily turned their heads to look at the source of the stench. There, Bufang was leisurely cooking stinky tofu. This time, Bufang still planned to order a spicy stinky tofu. This lunatic. He's actually cooking shit in the arena. Everyone's eyes widened, and their faces were filled with anger. What made them even angrier was that Bufang used the heaven and earth obsidian flame to cook feces. How could there be such a wasteful person in this world? Giving the heaven and earth obsidian flame to such a person was really a waste. They were so angry that their faces were almost distorted. Boom! Boom! The sounds of medicine furnaces exploding rang out. As expected, the doctors could not endure it. Their hands trembled, and their mental energy fluctuated, causing the medicine furnaces to explode. The medicinal powder scattered in the air. The alchemists, on the other hand, were much better. Although the alchemic fire in their furnaces was constantly flickering, at least they were able to stabilize it. The judge crawled up from the ground, his face black. Previously, he was the closest, so he smelled it the most clearly. That sour and refreshing smell was simply, "What the hell are you doing?" The judge was so angry that his lips were trembling. He felt that Bufang was definitely here to cause trouble. Could such a stinky thing have the same effect as an elixir? Bufang glanced at the judge, but he did not answer his question. He continued to cook the stinky tofu. After the stinky tofu was fried in the black turtle constellation wok, it was black with a tinge of yellow. When it was taken out of the wok, it was placed on a blue and white porcelain plate. Bright oil was poured over it, and the fragrant and spicy ingredients were poured over it. A bowl of spicy stinky tofu, which looked quite pleasing to the eye, was completed. "My work is done." After wiping his hands clean with a towel, Bufang raised his gaze and looked at the judge as he calmly said this. The judge, who was still angry, was stunned when he heard Bufang's words. It was done just like that? This was too fast. It hadn't even been an hour. The judge suppressed the anger in his heart, and his gaze landed on the spicy, stinky tofu that Bufang had prepared. Was this the thing that gave this kid the confidence to participate in the magical hand conference? The judge took a deep breath, and the stench immediately rushed into his nose. He could not help but cough. It was really King Stinky. Fine. Since you've completed it, I'll take a good look at your work. The judge's gaze was filled with malice, and he was picky. He took out a jade talisman from his bosom. The jade talisman was yellow in color, and there were many patterns carved on it. As the judge poured his true energy into it, the jade talisman suddenly lit up. A magic array the size of a washbasin revolved from the jade talisman, and it floated in his hand. This is a magic array used to examine the spiritual energy content of the contestant's work. The higher the spiritual energy content, the stronger the human body's ability to absorb it. Moreover, this magic array can also determine the attributes of each work, as well as the amplification effect on the human body. No one can cheat under this magic array. The judge gnashed his teeth as he said this. His gaze landed on Bufang, and he wanted to see if Bufang was afraid. However, he was wrong. There was no expression on Bufang's face, and there was no change in it. Go ahead and test it. Bufang was very calm, but he was astonished that there was such a magic array. The judge coldly snorted, and he almost pinched his nose as he walked in front of the sweet, spicy, stinky tofu. The stinky smell wafted over, and it was mixed with the fragrance of the sauce. When these two strange smells mixed together, he was somewhat dumbfounded. Sweat appeared on the foreheads of the surrounding alchemists. They didn't dare to look at Bufang, and they all focused on refining the elixirs in their alchemy furnaces. Buzz, the judge, enveloped the dish with the magic array. The light emitted from the magic array was like the stars in the sky, and it revolved unceasingly, as though it was scanning the dish. As the magic array revolved, the light of the magic array became brighter and brighter. How is this possible? The judge's eyes widened and his face was filled with disbelief. How could the magic array's light be so bright? This didn't make sense. This bowl of sh*t. Could it really be comparable to a 9th grade elixir? He didn't believe it, but the light of the magic array didn't seem fake. For a moment, he didn't even care about the stinky smell of the stinky tofu. He moved closer to the dish, and as he looked at the magic array's light, his expression changed unceasingly. Impossible. It's definitely fake. You can try it, and you'll know whether it's fake or not, Bufang said expressionlessly. How could I eat sh*t? The judge was enraged, and he glared at Bufang. Bufang was indifferent, and he calmly looked at the judge. Then, did I pass? Bufang asked. The judge was speechless. Did he pass? According to the reaction of the magic array, it was obvious that he had passed. However, in his heart, he didn't believe that this stinky thing could be comparable to a 9th grade elixir. Judge, how could this guy pass the test? It's for the sake of fairness. Just eat it and you must expose him. Judge, just eat it. He made such a stinky thing because he knew that you wouldn't dare to eat it. Once you eat it, his true colors will be revealed. That stinky thing caused us to be eliminated. Judge, you can't just let it go like this. Otherwise, we will sue the masters of the Magical Hand Conference. The faces of the contestants who were eliminated because of the stinky smell were filled with righteous indignation. The judge's face darkened when he heard their words. Damn it. It's easy for you to say. It's such a stinky thing. It's not like you're the one who ate it. The strange situation in the 8th arena attracted the attention of many people. Many of the spectators who were wandering around the arenas curiously looked over. They all saw this interesting scene. Although the 8th arena was stinky, the spectators were watching it with great interest. There was a contestant cooking sh*t in the arena, and the other contestants who were affected by it were not happy. They asked the judge to eat sh*t. F*ck. It's so exciting. Eat it. As a judge, you need to be fair. Eat it. Hurry up and eat it. Don't let this opportunistic person get away with it. Judge, we have faith in you. Eat it. The spectators, who didn't mind the matter being blown out of proportion, also started shouting. The judge's face darkened. It's easy for you to say, but if it were you, would you eat it? You only know how to talk nonsense. The judge wanted to cry in his heart. In the distance, there seemed to be a lord overseeing the magical hand conference, looking over. The judge's heart jumped. He hurriedly straightened his neck and said with a black face, "Stop messing around, I will eat it. For the sake of fairness." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.